being here. So this is our second meeting as zoning bylaw review committee. Tyler's running late and Sarah is unable to join us tonight. So the main goal, I guess, from last time when we met was to independently look at the zoning diagnostic form from town council and take kind of our own kind of basic opinion of what we consider to be a non-controversial change, which is something like a grade 1, something that would be more or less a discussion and one opinion one way or the other on a change, which would be like a grade 2, so something that's, all right, we have an option, A or B, which option do we all choose? I would consider that to be like a grade 2 change. And then grade 3 would be something we're probably not gonna be able to really kind of cover tonight. It's gonna probably take a lot more kind of review and going back to town council for some help there. I think that also the thought, at least when I had when looking at this, was we can't change everything overnight. It's not gonna be that way, which is kind of the whole point of the last meeting of talking about phases. So it can be overwhelming, I think, looking at this at first, thinking of, all right, how do we tackle this whole section? But I think what we just need to do really kind of tonight is kind of have an idea of, all right, what's non-controversial, what we need more help on, and what further questions could we bring to town council, and also start to think of, all right, what is a realistic first phase? And by first phase, I mean, what is something that we want to consider as zoning amendments for spring of '25? So if it's helpful just to kind of start and go through it, I'll just kind of go down, starting from the table of contents. Both these things I thought were just more or less general comments. Moving the definitions from section 14 to section 2, I think we all kind of agreed makes sense, but probably makes sense for once everything's
The other
done.
thing that goes along with that is any of the definitions that have been stuck within the bylaws, pull them out and put them in the
Specific sections.
definitions.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, instead of having the definition, like I think it was the ADU I just saw,
Yeah.
the definition of it is in that section. Put the definition in with all the other definitions, so people have one place to look.
Yeah, that, and I think there was some situations where it was almost the opposite of that. So there's some situations where a definition makes more sense in a specific use category rather than a general definition. I think some of those have to do.
She specified that, didn't
Yeah,
Yeah,
like
kind of
I think the
There are
telecommunications bylaw.
instances where the only way you find something, understand something, is by looking at the definitions, because it's not spelled out anywhere else. Like corner lots and
height
Yeah.
height
restrictions, stuff like
restrictions
that.
and things like
Yeah,
that,
and
different
tho-
height definitions.
And those we all.
Without a picture or something to
Mhm.
go
Yeah.
by.
And those are definitely, those are more general, we wanna cover those in the definition sections, but there are some specific uses that I think that definition almost works better within the use section, it doesn't get lost. So if the definition for a certain element is specific to that use, and I'm only picking like telecommunications bylaw in particular, if I'm reviewing that or I'm doing a project under that, it's almost better to have that right within that specific use section, because it's so specific to that use. Whereas if it's in the definitions, it can kind of get washed and maybe misinterpreted.
The other thing
elsewhere.
is the way it's listed in the definitions.
Yeah.
Lot, single, lot, corner.
Yeah.
You're looking for corner lot, you don't think to look at lot,
Yeah.
corner always. So,
Yeah.
being consistent in how we call something or how we list it. It is easy if all the things having to do with lot are all together in
Yeah.
one spot, but the definition should link up with the descriptions within the sections of the zoning.
Yeah.
Actually, Jim, corner lots in Norwood, they have two fronts,
Mhm.
two sides, they don't have,
That's what we have here.
No.
Walpole has the same thing.
No, it does not.
No, you get the, if you have this frontage, you can choose which one you want,
So
right?
in Walpole, it's if you have a degree of over 135 degrees, the entire run of it is considered your front. If you have a clear corner lot, so take Washington and Baker, if you're on a corner lot there, only one of them, which is the legal length of frontage, is your frontage.
Right,
In this town, we only have one front, one rear, all sides.
yeah, but sometimes the sides are treated as fronts,
No,
yes.
no, if they are, that's illegal.
Because you have to have the same 30-foot setback on the corner lots both streets.
No.
It's right in the bylaw.
So that's where our zoning says you only have one frontage. And that's where it gets mixed up in corner lots. We don't define it as having two. And that's the problem. If you have 135 degrees, then it's considered one.
All frontage, yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And that's where we tweak it. We only, and to your point on some of the descriptions, I would like to tweak on what rear lot is, because we have one of the weirdest definitions of a rear lot is the nearly most opposite. Like,
Oh.
that is one of the hardest things to justify
Yeah, in some
or
cases, I
to
suppose it would be.
stand up. We could argue, like we do in the building department all the time, we argue back and forth between all the inspectors on what's the nearly most opposite, because we have a lot of weird lots in this town, and what's the nearly most opposite. There's no definitive, so we try to stick to a standard that we all go by, but
So with that's a good point. I think that, not to bounce around and be more general, but that's something I think she notes a lot, especially when we get into, I wanna say section 6 gets a little bit funky with some of the outdated language, or kind of the, I wouldn't say outdated language, but it's almost, you have to really break it apart, like sentence by sentence,
Mhm.
to really kind of understand what they're trying to say. And does it make, I think it makes more sense from just a user standpoint, especially out of this whole process, not just being, consistent with state law, but also just from a user standpoint, if it takes, Jim and the building department to, have to really break down something to review it, how does that work for, like, someone trying to do an addition on their home, or,
What I'm thinking
user?
about is setback front in the definition.
Yep.
Setback required from the front lot line and from any street line of a corner lot or a free lot. It's on page 138, 114, I'm sorry.
114. So setback.
You said 114?
Setback
Yeah.
required from a front lot and from any street lot of a corner lot, there true. Yeah, so that's the problem with our zoning right now, is it's like an accessory dwelling unit. You go to page 108, you go to 109, you go to section 5, you go to section 6, it's multitude.
It's not consistent.
It's not, so if you jump to where it says frontage, so if you go to, let me see here, just to explain, go for it, because actually, we
Yeah,
had
frontage,
this.
it doesn't say anything.
So on corner lots, if you go to, it's actually in chapter 6, I'll find it if you want to keep going on this, I'll get it for you, and this is what throws it off. My only thing to Patrick on
To start, let me just
the
bring this back.
definitions, moving it, I know the KP Law said recommends section 2.
Yeah.
I prefer to make it, if we could, 1B or 1.5, because if we make it section 2,
Yeah.
we're gonna have to move every single chapter forward one, and then we're going, anything that locks back to it.
It's gonna be all the cross references.
And what the problem is, so we do have some sections that say, look back at section 2, which is our comes from the planning board, zoning board.
Yeah.
So we'll have to change all that, but
So
if we
you're right,
also,
maybe we should just call it
1.5,
definitions or something, or
Yeah.
just definition
Or
sections.
make it
Yeah.
section 0 at the beginning or something in front of it, because
Yeah.
again, if we move in like say, especially
Yeah,
5
it
and
will
6
throw everything
forward,
off.
it's
Yeah.
going to throw the whole
Basically,
book off.
the problem
Right.
isn't so much changing the header, it's changing within the body of it where it
Yeah.
references it.
It'll
Okay.
kill us
Yeah.
that way.
And that would be, yeah, so,
Well, that's what happened with some of the amendments, that
True.
you didn't know what it affected until you got to that particular item
Yeah.
years down the road,
Yeah.
so.
Or something that never came up a lot, all of a sudden gets tweaked and it throws you completely off.
yeah, I suppose you could call it
You have to
section
change
1
every
or
single
something
one.
like
Yeah.
that.
The
or-
other option.
Yeah, even like, I don't know, like, I just wanna make sure that there's not no mention of 1A anywhere
It would
else.
make a lot of sense, it would avoid all the
Moving,
changing of
jumping
everything
up.
else afterwards.
And then we have to
yeah.
retweak everything as well on each chapter that refers to another chapter, now we just moved it all forward.
Yeah,
So one move could
Yeah,
trigger
but
50
right
things to be
now it's
done.
in
So
the
we want to have
past,
KP
right?
Law just note that for us.
Yeah,
But that's something that I think, whatever happens
you all
with
we'd
the
have to change
definitions,
is like 15 and 16.
I would almost wait to the end to change the definitions. I don't know if that would seem to be kind of a reference from Carolyn, or a recommendation from Carolyn last time as well.
As we go through, maybe we can make a note
Yeah.
where it's referenced.
That's a good
Right.
point.
We could just
Yeah.
do one blanket change all the numbers.
Right,
at the
so
end.
as we go, we just make a note
Yeah.
of where it's listed, and then we could change that particular.
It's almost like its own article, just to basically,
Right.
hey, this is nothing controversial, we're just moving the definitions to 2, and then we're changing all the, we have to catch them all, that's the thing.
That's
Right,
the
right,
killer.
right.
That's the
Yeah.
That's
the
tough.
hardest part.
It's going to
Yeah.
be what will we catch
Because there's
everything?
so many things, you're gonna have to
Yeah.
sentence by sentence by sentence to make sure you don't miss something.
Because it's not that it's only referenced section 2, it's also referenced, like you could say, like again, this one to John's point, definitions in front lots also fall in chapter 5, chapter 6, and if they have referenced chapter 14 right now of definitions, you move to 2, you're going to have to rewrite so much that if we just change
Yeah.
definitions to 1.5, then that solves the whole problem, because nothing really, to the best of my knowledge, nothing in this book defers back to definitions, or very
Right,
little
I don't think
does.
anything
Yeah.
really does.
Otherwise, we're going to have to take every chapter and move it forward one.
That's
But
a good
ev-
idea. Good.
Moving every chapter forward 1, I don't really consider a problem, it's the references within the body that's
Which will
much
kill us,
more of a-
yeah.
Yeah,
You're true.
Yeah, 'cause I
Because
mean,
there are a lot of cross references.
Yeah, which I'd rather if we could make it, because again, even like some of our zoning states, like where our enforcement comes from is chapter 2.
Yep.
We'd have to change all those references, we'd have a lot of changes
okay.
to
1.5 might be better
would
than 1.
kill all that issue. We'd make
Yeah.
that very simple, 1.5 or 0.5 or 0,
Mm-hmm.
or even just section definitions
Yep.
would kill us
Well, you
changing.
label it section 1.5 definitions, and it
Yeah.
pretty much explains what it is, and you can stick it up the front, so
Yeah.
it's easily defined,
And it
and
saves
it's
us
there.
it saves a lot of time jumping through all the chapters as well.
Right, right.
Yeah.
There'll
So-
still probably be some corrections we'll find as we go through it, yeah, but.
Yeah.
I
So-
think the big, I guess, takeaway from that is, if it's going to be moved to the front, it's gotta be
We don't want
perfect
it
in
to
how you
shuffle
do it.
everything else, yeah, we want it
Yeah.
to be moved without affecting the
Yeah.
remainder, yeah.
Well, that's the
Yeah.
easiest way to do it.
Although we're
It's
gonna
not
move some-
impossible to do.
We're gonna move some chapters no matter what, just because
That's
it makes
true.
sense.
Well,
Yeah.
But-
And create
we'll
a
be
few
taking
different
things
sections.
out and inserting them into other chapters,
Yeah.
but I'm not sure if we'll.
Well, there's a
There's
few.
quite a few, like.
Yeah,
the
we'll get to
photo
it, but, you know,
tag.
there are, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's also a few references, we'll get to it, I guess.
Yeah.
But,
Just to John's point
Yeah.
on the frontage, so just an example of where our zoning jumps. If you look in page 48, section 6 definitions under 7B, it states, on a corner lot, only one street shall be used as a purpose of measuring minimum lot frontage and
Right.
setback requirement.
Oh, it's
that's a
That's
great example
of where they
problems.
contradict each other.
Yeah.
And that's what we got to clean up. So if you look at 7B, so on page 48, 7B, on corner lots, only one street shall be used for the purpose of measuring minimum lot frontage and setback requirement.
Okay, I haven't noticed the setback requirements, I guess,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay.
So that's the
And
killer.
that should override the definition.
Yeah, so that's why we do get at a lot in some, to Ed's point, we do get a lot of site plans that the civil engineers put frontage on both sides, and we have to get, no, you have to be a side, because we're
Oh,
one
you can't
town.
count it around the loop,
No.
yeah, that's a no-no.
Yeah, so we get, well, if you're on a corner lot, to
It's either
Ed's
this
point,
side or that side.
yeah, with
not
us.
both.
Other towns have both. I've been in a town where I've had done property where there's been 7 fronts, 19 sides, it could be, they don't, and it might have 0 rears. So how far do you want to go down that loophole?
We don't wanna go down that
In the
loophole.
centre of town, so say take somewhere like, Glenwood, Main and Ellen. If you're on that corner, if you took over that whole block as a building, some towns would consider you having 3 frontages with
Yeah.
one side, no rears. So, again, I think
So where
ours
you wanna
is
take the
not
address
bad.
from there. Yeah.
We do have some, again, I can pull up some lots that are really weird. I think on that one, we need to figure out, since I've been here, the biggest argument we've always had in the building department is what's the nearly most opposite? And that's how you pick the
And
rear.
It is tricky, like the corner of Baker and Washington, you're right. Which is the, well, the frontage is gonna be on Baker, because that's the only street that has length on it, but it's listed as Washington Street.
Which because it was pre-existing, so you would
Pre-existing.
consider Washington your, because again, there's another section, throw it back into again, when it comes to your address, that your address can only be on a lot that's technically your frontage. So if you have a pre-existing lot like you're on Washington, then Washington's considered your frontage. But if it was a brand new house and your frontage was only Baker, your address could only be Baker. You won't be given Washington because it doesn't have the frontage length.
Right.
And that's in another section, so that's it, we have 3 different sections that, to try and figure out your lot layout, so that's where this will be perfect for trying to clean up small things like
And
that.
beyond the other thing, it's 135.
Exactly, yeah.
So, Jim, I recall that, we had an incident one time where they had legal frontage on both streets. And they could choose which street they wanted to be on?
So if you have enough frontage
On both sides?
on both sides, you get to pick
Right.
which one you want to call your address. So we
Right.
have it where people don't want, say, a main street address, they
Right.
like a nice side street address, so it's more private.
Yeah.
So the last time that happened, the latest that I know was Mr. Walsh, JT Walsh, up on Washington Street, and he's bought a two-family. He wanted to change the address to, I think, Stonehill. It's almost down at the Foxborough side. But he had legal frontage on both sides. He could pick, but we kind of said, if
You already
you,
have the existing.
you already had, he'd have to move, every neighbour's address would have to move, because there was already one stone.
Oh,
So we said,
yeah, you could.
It would be a killer for all these neighbours.
Yeah, yeah.
So he said, yeah, he'd leave it at Washington Street. But you have to have legal frontage, so if you're saying an RA, you need a, yep, I don't.
I don't wanna ruin the flow.
Oh God, my
In the
foot's all over the place. But legal frontage on a corner, you have to have the frontage of, say, RA, you need 125 on both streets, and then you can cherry pick which one you want as your address. But if you had 125 here and you had 100 over here, this is your address,
Yeah.
this is your frontage, you
Yeah.
don't get a choice, unfortunately. To your case, it's a pre-existing, so Washington was, so by default, we always consider Washington your frontage, even though your Baker is long enough, then you could change it, you have the right to change your address to Baker. But if your Baker wasn't long enough, your address would always stay in Washington.
So, yeah, so that would work. So what if you just said that the opposite side of the frontage is the rear?
So that would be good if.
If
so
it was square?
If it was
If
square,
it's square,
if it
we
was
don't-
square, it's not always
We have
square.
terrible lots, like, being honest, so just to give an example, we have a lot up on, we have multiple lots around town, but just one off the top of my head is on South Street, around 760. That's the road, and there's probably multiple houses. So just to give you an example, that's house here, his lot goes up and goes all the way down here, and a quarter of a mile away it comes out again. It was done that way to get the legalised lot size. But, so if this is his front, would you consider that his rear? Is that his rear? Is that his rear?
You're
And
right.
that's the problem right now.
So, not that this is all great, but we do got a lot to cover.
Focus on-
I
yeah.
know everyone has,
This can go down the rabbit
everyone would
hole.
like to sleep
We're on
eventually.
Yeah.
But that is, I mean, that's a great example. I think the bulk of what you guys are talking about, the inconsistency. We have an inconsistent definition within the definition section, and then we have an actual within section 6.
Contradicts
It contradicts it, so what works, what doesn't, I guess what I have taken away is whatever changes within the definitions should probably happen at the end, so to account for any sort of
Mhm.
alterations within the body of the zoning. You know what I mean, so whatever.
True,
Yeah.
that'd be the easiest thing to adjust, because typically not referencing back to anything else, everything's going back to the
Yeah.
definition.
Yep.
Just, and then they know where the definition is, they don't need to identify the definition.
Yep. So, section 1.
Yeah.
Already?
Yeah. So I did not really see anything wrong with what was proposed. I thought everything kind of worked from the standpoint of just, it made sense. Did anyone have any problems with that?
I wasn't sure I was understanding what she was talking about, the title authority of the home rule amendment. What was she trying to get at?
That is.
The first
Where
page.
is that?
One.
So basically,
It's just referencing the home rule for Massachusetts state law.
yeah.
Which is the wording she has here,
Right.
yeah. On
So, yeah.
Page.
We're dictated by
page 2.
obviously 48 for zoning, but yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
But also these provisions in Mass General Law, we also want to acknowledge are part of the zoning amendment.
Okay, so it's just adding this, which relates to that whole rule, okay.
Which I don't think we had in our original, right?
No,
Like in the original.
current one.
Yeah.
The current one, let me just bring it up, so it's almost like we wanna go back and forth between her recommendations. So no, this is the first one, I guess, this is their current zoning under 101, we reference essentially 48, we don't reference anything else, I think.
It's 89
Okay.
Yeah.
or 43. So just an added reference.
Yeah, okay.
But I think I would agree, just to get the ball rolling.
Yeah.
Section 1, I didn't see anything that wasn't a sort of a softball.
Now, the other thing was,
I mean, it doesn't mean there's not gonna be discussion on it, it just means that the discussion
Tonight.
She's-
can be
Yeah.
simple.
she's saying get rid of, what are we getting rid of? Getting rid of 1, 2, but then she keeps labeling everything else.
Oh, yeah,
So,
so,
those things have to be.
the inference 1, 2 is in fact 1, 3, so I think she may have missed,
Yeah.
she wrote the wrong number, but I got what she was saying.
Cause she severally, she's saying it's 3, and it was, oh, I see.
Yeah.
So that is gonna become 3. Okay, so this is 1, 3 is the new commission of fire. So purposes, or, so we're getting rid of 3,
Yep.
okay, and everything.
So,
So severability was going to become 3, memory becomes 4. the effective
Yeah, everything
becomes
would
5.
go up.
Okay,
Yep.
I had a cross this up on, okay.
Yeah, no, I saw that too, John. There's a few instances where you just have to, I get what she was saying, but she may have put the wrong number, or she may have just put the wrong digit.
Yeah,
It doesn't happen a lot, but,
And I figure we'll probably find that when we start drafting the red line version of
Yeah.
the official
Yeah.
that we want to submit.
yep,
Somewhere there's gonna be an A where there should have been a B.
that's
I think it'll
the
be-
nature of this. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, when we get to 5.
Or we could
it's
just
gonna
go
be crazy.
completely randomized numbers.
5
and
had went off of its own.
Just let everyone figure it
Yeah.
out.
pattern.
I forget what the word was.
Doesn't
it's,
match to most
a
of the
grammar
other.
mistake when
Oh,
we just.
yeah.
We have to almost
What-
just read 5 and
Scribblers are-
6, I think,
What is
is
it?
where it gets
Scribblers
kinda
are-
weird.
Yeah, yeah.
It references
I
like, you know,
code
was it,
revision.
5A, where we just,
5, 1, A, 3,
Yeah.
and yeah.
she just says, go back to however, so yeah, we're talking
Keep it
about,
consistent with how
Consistency.
it started. That
Yep.
makes sense, yeah.
which is just kind of,
Yeah.
that's nothing difficult, just
Why
need to catch
cross
it.
it, why change things midstream, yeah.
Yeah,
And if we're rewriting it all, it's gonna be easy to do it all and say that we're not doing the, you know.
Well, when we correct
Two
it, we have to make sure
A13s.
the cross references go back to the new numbers.
Yeah.
That's gonna be interesting part.
and that's kind of where, you know, almost how you
The spell
wanna treat
check.
each amendment, each section has its own amendment, almost, or does that make
In
sense?
some cases, that's why we might wanna do that.
Yeah.
You might be able to do like 1, 2, 3, whatever.
As
because
it's, as
it-
one.
As one thing, cause it's pretty much, there's nothing major that's changing, I don't think.
Yeah,
Establishment of districts might have enough questions, it might be worth keeping that alone. 5 and 6 are probably gonna have to be standalones, yeah,
Yeah.
because they're gonna have so many questions,
yeah,
That's the way I thought, 1, 2, 3 was just language, cleaning it up.
A lot of it's
It's not really changing the intent or
Yeah.
anything, it was just,
Mhm.
I think it,
And, well, adding in that 1, 2, 2, or whatever, adding in the planning board, that, which makes sense.
Yeah.
It has rules for zoning, and planning is doing similar things, so they should have their spelled out.
so yeah, let's go to 2 now, that's a good point, John, so overall, I thought this made sense, but I think a few items, 2.2, 2.3, 2.5, just wanna have kind of a discussion with everybody here. 2.2, so including the language for the planning board, I think it makes sense, it just
Right.
kinda moves everything down. But I wanna confirm with everybody here if that
That makes sense.
makes sense.
Yeah, because there's not really a whole bunch of sections in that, and that's to change. It makes some references in few, I guess, but most of the things don't reference back to these.
Yeah.
They just reference a special permit or variance, they don't reference 2.2 or 2.3.
So, let's try to keep the notes going. Again, and I were talking about this a little bit before the meeting, what will be essentially, 2.3. There's a few notes that she references that aren't, you know, I get what she's saying, but almost might make sense if maybe it come back with like a red line
I
version.
did that as a 2, so.
But as a 2,
Yeah,
yeah.
Yeah, cause there's so many things there that
It was
take
a
a little
lot.
discussion.
It's not a quick change, it almost.
Yeah, trying to
Yeah.
understand how she's referencing certain things.
But
Some
it
of
also,
is
it also
based
goes to
on-
different sections as well. I
That's
had it
true
as a
too,
3 on
she's
mine.
pulling things out and putting things in, I think.
Yeah.
Just
Well,
because
just
because we
rearranging
hadn't looked at the other
And
ones
then a lot
yet.
of that makes sense, what she's saying, but,
So I thought about that before, and I think it may just make sense from this committee standpoint if maybe come back with like just a redlined version of that. I mean, ultimately, there should be a redlined version of the entire thing, but like it may, from the standpoint of like, okay, I get that, it looks better when I can visualize what those
Yeah,
changes
yeah.
are.
true too, yeah.
So maybe just do that for 2.3.
Or where you see something was taken out here and put here.
Right.
Yep.
So you can see what's swapping positions, and what, and yeah, it makes sense, it goes here, rather than here.
Yep.
And that is easy to do when you have something that's filled out.
So, I apologize, but, going into the lot now, so.
No
And
worries.
the only I know.
Yeah,
And,
no worries.
I mean, she said the bus pulled right up instead of waiting for us. You know, I mean, last time she went away, I'm waiting for hours to pick her up.
Yeah.
The only thing I
Yeah.
have though, in 3.1, an enforcement there, 3.1, responsibility enforcement. In that first paragraph, do we need to add subdivisions in there also? Yeah, it says, the enforcement of all items and conditions, variances, special permits, site plan approval, and decisions issued by pursuant of its provisions. Should we add subdivisions in there also, or would that be included?
Where are
I
you
think
looking
the
at?
reason of, so
Okay,
3.1.
3.1,
Force.
okay,
Yeah.
responsibility and enforcement,
Yeah,
in that first paragraph right underneath that. It says conditions, variances, special permits, and site plan approval. Would we need to include subdivisions in that?
So I think because it goes back
Sorry.
to issued pursuant to its provisions,
well,
I think-
subdivisions are, ideally subdivisions are just looking at the roads.
yeah, so
We
it's also.
can't do anything except say the roads aren't laid out right, or the roads need to be adjusted somewhat, they need to be wider or something. We can't really say anything about the lots next to him, that
Mhm.
falls back to him, so planning is basically saying the road layout is this, and it falls back to planning and the
Yes.
subdivision control law, basically.
Yeah, so the reason they don't put in subdivision is because it's a road, so even if it says a private road, it's still subdivision that the controller put it in. And if it's a private road, once it's well, not even so much accepted, but once it's in effect, if it's a private road, we've no jurisdiction on it. The police do. If it's a public road, if it's a private road, then even the police don't have any jurisdiction on it. It's the owners and the HOA have the right to. So say if you're parking on their street every night, and they're going, Eddie, and you're like, that's a road, and they're going, that's fine, they'll get your car towed, because it's a private way. If it's an accepted road through a subdivision, then the police have the authority on it. We don't. So even if we can't really put subdivision in there, because again, to John's point, the lots, yeah, we do have setbacks and everything, we control that side, but the road, we have no legality, zoning has no legality on it to enforce, so that's why subdivisions are never put in there.
And more importantly, no liability if they screw it up.
Yeah.
The other one's very certain not the town.
Pretty good. Do you have anything else, or is that the?
No, that was as far as I got, I guess, so.
All right.
But
Yeah,
I will,
I'll send out a link to the meeting for everybody as well. If
Okay.
it, you know,
Can I, go into the meeting on my phone as I'm driving and just listen in?
well, I mean,
No.
it's just recorded. We're
Okay,
not live.
I'll-
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll figure out how to do that,
No worries.
okay.
All right.
All right, sorry about the guy,
No worries.
but, airlines are never on time
Plenty more to go.
until you don't want them, right? All right, good night.
Thanks. So let's just go back to, I had a few things on section 2, just I think that might need a little bit more discussion.
I think I had most of section 2 as a 2 or a 3.
That's right, yeah.
So,
Because there's a
yeah,
lot of changing words.
Yeah.
you know,
Well,
But it's also a lot of
It's
look
an
backs,
important
yeah.
section, because it says what you can do with a special permit, what you can't do
Right.
with a special
Mhm.
permit, and what you can do with a variance and what you can't do with
Right.
it. So it's
Yeah.
key, but needs to be worded so everyone can understand it.
Well, I think the variance section, like, it needs to be really looked at and honed in on, because the additional, I mean, you
Yeah,
have a
her
certain.
comments here were kinda unclear on 2.3, I thought. I
Right.
wasn't sure what she was trying to say about that.
So you go to certain towns and cities that have sort of weak variance structure,
Mhm.
and you end up, I don't know if you've driven through Newton in the last 10 years, but they completely lost their community as far as feel goes. Modern house right next to a colonial house, being variance of like a 4-car garage right next to the road, that because they just keep adding variances because they don't have any sort of structure to their variance schedule.
Yeah, what it variance should say.
But we don't either, right?
Not as much.
We don't
I
have
think,
anything
I
that-
think it needs, well,
Well, we go to the basis straight from Mass General Law.
yeah, variance
um,
doesn't really have a lot of definition.
Which is you meet the criteria, again, the three criteria that need to get a variance. And it's a very high threshold, so
That is-
we explain that to people, like, a building permit, you come in, you get your permit. Like, you come in for a special permit, 80% chance you will get a special permit, 20% chance you will not. When it comes to variance, it's 95% you will not get it, there's a 5%, and then it even depends on, I've told people that there's 110% you will not get a variance, but they have the right to go for it, but I'm going, you need, so it's limited to 3
It's very
thresholds.
limited to what you can.
Unique,
what you
yeah.
can get a variance.
The only difference with a variance and a special permit is, when you approve special permits or look at special permits, you look at what you've been consistently doing. So if you've done a special permit and it meets the criteria, you can look back at other projects. When it comes to a variance, you can't go, well, we get this gentleman a variance over here, so now we're going to give this gentleman because he falls in the same category. It does not. Variance is the one thing you're not consistent in, because it individually looks at each individual thing because it's unique to them. So there is no consistency with variance. If your town to Newton's, they do it, is they keep their variance very consistent. And that's a huge red flag to me, because a variance is the one thing there should be no consistency on, because you're looking at each lot as an individual lot, unique to that person, the layout, the topography, the shape, the size. You're looking at, so it's unique, you have to show uniqueness. That's where special permits are, yeah, you are allowed to, because special permit gives you an avenue that, okay, you're not allowed as of right to do it, but if you meet these criteria, you can. A variance is, no, you cannot do it.
The criteria are so limited,
Mm-hmm.
it's very hard to get it, yeah.
Yeah.
And if you go to any of the zoning meetings, they tell you too, you have to show that you can't do it any other way.
Yeah.
You have requirements that you can't do it any other way. There's such a ledge in front of you, you can't get through that, you have to go around it.
Yeah.
I think if we have the ability to, similar to what we did with the MBTA, is looking at the current structure and what is in that area, right? And utilizing that sort of as an avenue for growth, yet not an avenue for someone to, erect a structure that doesn't conform to the existing structures. And, not using it more conformally like certain cities have done, it really has been a detriment to those cities. But also same as having, a random variance of now you get a 4-story RV garage because you want one, and your friend was on the board,
Mm-hmm.
and it's sitting next to a bunch of 1-story houses. That can happen in certain situations. Whereas if that commission or board that needs to look at it by rule has to look at the existing structures in the area, then it helps.
The current bylaws were designed in a lot of cases around trying to protect the neighbors from
Mhm.
something not fitting in. And we're bending that a lot now. 40Bs are bending it all out of shape, and 64A is bending it all out of shape. But we have to, those are we can't do anything about 40B until the state.
State's not gonna
says,
touch that.
Go
Yeah.
away!
It's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
But to your point though, John.
We'll take all the representatives, we'll stick them next to a 40B. You have to live here for the rest of your life.
But all
because
40Bs
you
are
want
not bad,
40B.
John, either.
Not all of them, but a
Yeah,
lot of
I mean,
them.
40B serves a purpose.
Yeah.
And
They serve some purposes, yeah.
But I think if towns had been more proactive, like Walpole, in getting 10% affordable housing, we wouldn't be
True.
worried about 40Bs. So really, I think what
That
the
is a
state
big
did,
issue, yeah.
the
In the
state
case of
said,
the towns.
towns are not doing enough affordable housing, so we're gonna force you to. But if you go do it yourself,
I mean,
then
a
you're
good
gonna be
example,
good.
sorry to focus, but like good examples of this past May, we, the planning board sponsor as well, the change to include the inclusionary housing requirement.
Yeah.
that's something that's great, it's great we did that.
It
When-
will be a step in the
Yeah,
direction.
it'd have been good to
Stepping
have that
stone. But the
5
whole
years
thing,
ago,
like,
but it is, you know.
when they
yeah.
first started talking
Yeah.
about 40Bs, I ran some numbers or whatever, I said, sure, okay, you wanna get to 10%? You
Yeah.
have to build 1,000 more houses to get to 10%.
Yeah.
And that just throws more. Every house you build increases your lot number and makes the 10% harder.
Depending on the type of
You're-
development.
So unless you're building hundreds of apartments, which all count,
Yeah.
Yeah.
that's the only way to get up to 10%.
Yeah, so the problem with 40Bs too is what you gotta look for is,
No.
everybody says 10%, 10%, 10%. You want to look past the 10%,
Right.
because Arlington
Because
found out the
10%
hard
isn't
way.
gonna solve it.
No,
You
because
need
once
more
the
than
census
10%.
within 10 years comes out, you might be at 10%, you drop down to 9.7,
Yeah.
and everybody thinks, oh, if we do 0.3, we're safe again. No, if 50 40Bs come in at one time, you have to accept them all, even if they blow you past it.
Yeah,
The thing with 40Bs too, honestly, is some have come to this town that are straight, and other towns that are straight out, the developer's a 40B specialist, and they come in, they're not gonna, they know
Not
what they're
gonna
doing,
let
they're smart.
anything- they're gonna
Some
let
40Bs we have and other towns have as well is, being honest, we've created them
Yeah.
by saying, well, we don't like you, so we're not gonna give you what you legally could do in your land. So the developer comes out going, I'm sticking a 40B there then. And that's what 40Bs are. Sometimes you're getting a 40B, is it worth cutting your nose off to spite your face? You got to sometimes take
Sometimes, yeah.
the bad decision rather than the worst decision. So that'll be a tweak on that. On section 2 also,
Yep.
I was thinking, do we want to clear up some of the time frames to make it more consistent?
The extensions and things.
Yeah, so like, we have the 2 years for, say, a special permit.
Right.
Yes.
The state's 3 years.
Right.
So we have a weird thing, the same with site plan approval. For some reason, we've 65 days, 90 days is the standard. And it will give you more time to process it as well, rather than being, like a site plan is 65 days.
Site plans are handled here a little bit differently.
Yeah.
I know you can speak
Well-
to that, where it's the start of the app, you can correct me if I'm wrong, so it's the start of the application,
I
it starts the clock, so
That
basically as
starts
soon
the
as I
clock.
applied, and it's almost like I'd have, unfortunately, cause they didn't, when they made the Affordable Homes Act, they didn't incorporate the changes, or they didn't incorporate site plan review into 40A, which I wish they did, because then it would make everything easy for everybody, but it's almost like, I guess my suggestion, would not to bounce around to section 13, but I would try to incorporate it, and try to make it similar to a special
If the
permit
state
in
is
terms of
giving us
time
90
requirements.
days, it makes sense to, because
Yeah.
one of our issues a lot of times, well, just recently,
Yeah.
he had some coming in, he had
Yeah.
to come in to zoning to
Yep.
get the 64A approval.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And he had to wait, and he had to get,
Conservation.
conservation.
Yeah.
And then finally he came to us. By the time he came to us,
Yeah.
the 65 days was almost up.
Yeah.
He didn't wanna do it right before us, so I had to say, you're not giving us any more time, I have to say no.
Yeah. So that's,
I don't wanna say no, you finally came up with a plan that was halfway decent. I wanted you to go forward,
I
but
don't
I,
think we
you
should
need
talk
to
about
cross the
specific
i's
things
and
though.
dot the
Because
t's.
Yeah.
I don't wanna get
Right.
into.
but I guess to
specific
Jim's
things.
point with
Yeah.
section, specific to section 2,
Two.
right? When we
Yeah,
talk
it has
about
to.
like the time frame of when to act on the special
Co-
permit,
yeah,
it
coordinating
should be the same as
our
40A.
timeframe probably with whatever the
Yeah,
state
I mean,
is.
this is why I put it as a 3, is because it does incorporate multiple sections that I think all need to be looked at. And there's a lot of look backs as to, referencing this to that, and
Yeah.
it's similar to the definitions, where it really, like, this section in particular, I think, really does bounce around, and it needs to be consistent.
And you want to be consistent kind of within reason to the state, because honestly, if we deny something after, it gives them an avenue to go to the state and appeal us, and the state are gonna side with what they approve.
Yep.
So the state will definitely side with the developer and some, or a builder or a
Right.
homeowner on that. I know KP Law had said it too, but I was thinking, that's why I agreed, definitely agreed too, on the application. So right now we have all the paperwork, all the applications on paper.
Yeah.
KP Law, they'd say, no, it's actually in the zoning, that you don't have to put it in there, but
Right.
just to put it in there, rather, that also, we're gone to all online.
I think it's the problem, and this is what the whole first bullet point here is,
Yeah.
all those submission requirements have that as just part of your board's rules and regulations.
Mhm.
Because
Yeah.
you can change that whenever, whereas if to make a zoning
Zoning
change,
has to be
Yeah.
part of the change.
yeah, something small
So
changes.
putting the durations, moving back into the regulations or something.
Well, the durations, you're talking about for the,
But how long you have to do.
that you can incorporate, or at least try to reference 48. I think we're talking about like, all right, I need 10 hard copies, I
Oh,
need one
that's-
here,
that stuff, yeah,
all that
yeah.
stuff should just be a board,
Yeah,
how you,
yeah.
your own rule
How
and
you
regulations.
apply.
Particularly in the digital age.
Like a
where-
planning board, you guys have your
Yeah.
own rules and regulations, or you can incorporate your own rules and regulations. Then if I'm an applicant, you're like, all right, well, it's not defined in our zoning, but this is how we do it. I need this, this, and this. And they'll,
You never know the moving
Yeah.
requirements too, like conservation might need a paper form for a grant that they have with the federal
Mhm.
government. We don't know that, but if they do, they can make that as their rule and regulation, that doesn't affect the planning board, which doesn't affect the,
yeah.
so.
Yeah, cause that's the
Because
trick,
more
right
and
now,
more
the
people want
state
stuff to
level,
come in
they say they will
electronically.
accept electronic.
Yeah, and I think it's
It's
just,
easier
people
to
want to keep
go back and
electronic,
forth
they
with
don't
it
want
than
it.
and you just go there and print another copy if you need another copy or something.
and I think it's just easier from the standpoint of if a board wants to handle something a little bit different than another board, and it just works out better for them, handle it as just your rules and regs, as opposed to having it, you know, if we gotta go back to town meeting to make a change to incorporate, all right, and give me a flash drive, like, that's, you know.
Yeah, if you want to change
Like
one
a lot of
page on the
boards, really,
plan.
you need a lot of paperwork or something, you need to have
Yep.
the people, you need to have
Yeah.
that hearing in person, so that the people, the
Yep.
public can come in and make their comments.
Yep.
Yeah.
So we all agree that section 2 is a 2?
Yeah.
Section two.
Yeah.
You talking about 2.2?
Well,
Two in
section
general.
Two in general.
So 2, I had one note, because I think I needed a board opinion on, I need you guys' opinion on something, I think it's section 2.
See if variances, yeah, board
Um,
appeals and decisions.
So variances, I thought made a
Some of the
little bit
things
sense.
were-
Let me just kind of bring up what I'm saying.
Variances didn't make sense to me.
Alright, let me bring it up then. So section 2.3, well, 4.
Now, her idea that, what was it? It
Appeals.
wasn't variances, the special permit, bringing it in different
Yep.
A, B, C, D, or whatever, yeah.
Yeah, so I think the entire section can, let's read it, so the entire section can be replaced at general law 48, section 10. I recognize there's some convenience in including the information here, rather than expecting the public to locate the statute, which we talked about before the previous meeting. If you prefer to keep this provision in, then I suggest making it more user-friendly as described herein. First paragraph of the subsection will be divided into 4 numbered paragraphs. Paragraph A, containing general law 48, section 10, prerequisites and limitations for the grant of a variance. Paragraph B, referencing the statutory procedures. Paragraph C, authorizing the Board of Appeals to impose conditions and safeguards. Paragraph D, containing the variance lapse provisions. The current second paragraph of 2.3 restates the statutory procedure and the time limitations, kind of what we talked about for application filing, notice of public hearing and decisions. It is sufficient, in my opinion, to simply state the variance application will be processed, heard, and decided in accordance with the procedures set forth in general law 48, subsections 10 and 11. This provision should be numbered as paragraph B. And then she suggested the following language for D. I recommend, I won't read the entire thing, but you see how she wants to structure D right there?
Mhm.
So I do have a red draft version going, so if you wanna look at the board, guys, this is kind of where I thought we were going with
I am
variances.
good with her things, but I thought we just wanna make sure everybody.
Yeah, and everyone understands what she's
That's
saying.
what I'm saying, yeah, cause getting, so basically getting rid of
Okay, so
what's already
the
in
D
the
in
law.
her thing
like
is
section-
replacing basically the little bit that is
Yes.
in now.
Yep,
Now, is she saying then that this, top of her page 5, the current second paragraph, which is this one, is she saying that should be back up top in B?
You go to your red line version, that might help.
yeah. So this is what the variance section would look like. It'd be removing this provision when it goes over the whole days, and then you're really just referencing
You're just
48 section
enumerating it.
10. So,
So getting rid of that and just leaving B as that is shown right now.
yeah. And then having D as its new subsection. So, right now,
The rest is back to the rest goes to, okay, submission, D is the new one here, A is that. Okay, that makes a little more sense
you
now.
know, if it's helpful just for everybody, this is what we
Should
currently
go back to
have.
your-
Yep. So this is section, well, variances
Yeah.
now. It's all kind of.
Wordy, it doesn't really,
It's just a
Yeah,
block.
It's a block,
Check it
yeah.
out.
You
The
can see
crumbs,
here-
a lot into a little paragraph and doesn't really tell you anything for
Yeah.
variance. This does make it nice and clean and gives you the steps.
Teaches you the steps, it's a little
Yeah.
more easy.
Don't-
digestible.
I mean, I don't know if we're trying to get into the nitty gritties of each of these sections tonight, but the only thing I would, if we're going to reference a time frame in a GL, I would include some sort of language of, or whichever is shorter. And so, because if they change the GL, and we're saying that you have 6 months, but they changed it to 9 months in the GL, we want the language to not be.
Oh, by GL you mean the state law?
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
you were saying like if the general law right now says 1 year and a variance, if they say, okay, we'll extend it to 2 years down the road.
right. So whether it be whichever is shorter, whichever is longer, whichever one we want it to be,
Right.
that way if we're referencing the
Covering
GL
something in that,
and they change it at the state level, we don't have to go back and change it on our zoning. It just,
That's a good point.
So he would say a variance, so take the last line of the red line you done there,
Okay.
which will be, so it says the last line just says the variance.
Board of
Or
Appeals does not
expiration
grant
of
such an
original
extent.
one-year period.
30 days of extension of the variance rights will elapse
That's
on
right, yeah.
expiration of the original 1 year period, which is standard to Tyler's Point, or
or the reference to
Reference
GL
to
48, subsection 10.
so in case they change it down the road, it's like
It's
Or is
safeguarding,
defined within.
the time frame in 48 section 10.
whichever is shorter or
Shorter.
longer, whichever.
Or
one.
not, whichever you want to
Yeah.
go. Do you want
Right.
to keep it all 1 year, or if the state
I'd
ever
say
meant to
shorter.
go to shorter?
Yeah, you don't want them to just do something and then do nothing with it, really, just hold it for potential something else.
Or the time period defined in
Mhm.
GL, yeah.
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 Obviously this is all editable, but
Yeah.
anytime we're referencing a date that is referenced also in another document, we wanna be able to protect our date.
So it doesn't, we don't have to change ours.
Yeah.
Right,
The
'cause
law
otherwise,
changes. Yeah.
they could change it and we don't even notice that they changed it, or town meeting doesn't happen, whatever,
Yeah, and it makes appeals very easy for the applicant then to,
to go straight to the state and then get
Yeah.
it overturned.
Yeah.
yeah. No, that's good.
Yeah, where do you find that little?
You gotta go,
Spooky.
let's do you go to,
Special
go to
characters.
insert, you go to symbol.
Oh, okay.
I had to figure that out myself.
Okay.
I used to
Alright,
do
so
Patrick just does
adding this
copy.
link, well, the copy just makes it quicker,
Mhm.
Yeah.
So, or the time period defined in general law, chapter 48, section 10.
Whichever may be shorter.
Or whichever may be shorter.
Can it
Yeah,
be shorter
right.
if the state law makes it longer?
So that's, so which,
That's-
that's the catch,
Yes.
which way do you go? Do you
Yeah,
go
I mean,
whichever shorter?
each way it depends on what we wanted to do, right?
Yeah,
I would
yeah.
just, I would always just.
So
leave
if
that
we're,
back.
and it needs to be easier for the applicant, so if we're saying, like, to your point earlier, whereas we have 60 days, the state has 90 days, we could say whichever may be longer. And so it gives them the opportunity to use the state's guidelines, but it also gives them, like, ours is saying 60, but they could use a state's timeline and say, well, I was within the I was within
They can still
MGL
do that,
48A.
Yeah,
Yeah, cause we can't undo what the state
Right,
allows.
exactly.
but to Tyler's point, if we say whichever is shorter and then the state change and go, well, now variances have to be enacted within 6 months,
Yeah.
then we're going to GL rather than our 1 year, which on variance, I don't think they'll ever go to 6 months.
So then,
does it?
so that in case the state makes it shorter.
Makes it shorter,
Right.
Shorter,
yeah.
Yeah, cause if it's longer, then we.
Right.
We have
Something
some
that I
Okay.
don't
Yeah.
think will
Yeah.
change, but to
No.
Tyler's point, might as well
Yeah.
just keep, so,
Yeah,
time
and
and
shorter, I think to his point is better.
We want something to last us, last time, we
Yeah,
don't wanna
and
do this
we don't
again
wanna
in 6
bother
years.
changing
Exactly. I'm just
bylaws
gonna
for
write
small
this for my
things.
own
Yeah.
purposes.
Yeah.
and
And
make
honestly,
sure
I
run it by
doubt they're gonna make it shorter
Sure.
just for the fact it's such a hard threshold to get a variance. If anything, they'd make it longer, I'm being honest, cause
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a tough time frame.
Okay.
And if you wanna steal the language from a GL, I can give you a GL that you
I
can
think
steal the
the,
language from.
Yeah.
I think you have an extra.
so you're a lawyer, right? Are you?
Lawyer.
Yeah, so you.
Between 10 and whichever, I don't think you need that or, do you?
What, 10, so, or the time
They do
period
that a
defined in
lot,
general law,
the
chapter
maybe shorter,
48,
maybe
section
longer
10,
when it comes to criminal
or
code
whichever is shorter.
for sentencing.
Cause you
Oh,
already
yeah.
have, you have 1 year period
Yep, I get what
or
you're
the
saying.
time period defined.
Whichever is
Whichever
shorter.
is
Yeah,
shorter.
that reads better. Alright, so does everyone kind of see that better now, it's
Yeah.
redlined?
Good
So
with
that's
that.
I'll make sure to do that for section, I have a few, I did redline this considerably, so if there's something, we'll go through it.
Yeah, I think it's good to do that, actually,
It's easy
to see the red line.
Yeah,
If you've made a lot of changes already, then,
Yeah, 2.2 for, just not to,
Yeah,
I added a few things, but I didn't add really all of what she was talking about.
Yeah.
The findings and determination I thought made sense, but just from the standpoint, I think we have a limited amount of time here, and I know
Yeah.
we wanna try to get through a lot, so
Yeah.
I'll send this
Yeah.
out in maybe a more digestible version, like,
yeah.
here's what it currently is, here's what I think the proposal is, what is your opinion of it? I think that's gonna be
It's gonna be,
my homework
yeah.
for you all,
Yeah.
or to provide you
And
all.
send you send the red line version.
So, alright, let
Oh,
me,
this is the current one that you have?
yeah, so this is, I have this, this is just a copy of the red line version.
So
that I
Patrick
have.
does
It's a
need
Word
free time.
document,
Okay.
so we
Yes.
can turn off, if you have Word, you can turn off and on whatever level of
Yeah.
of edit you want, so.
Oh, yeah, so I mean, I
Yeah.
can,
Yeah,
I
I
can
mean,
make
but I
it-
meant, if you send it to us, we can do that, too.
Yeah, I
If
can
you
send it to you
wanna-
as one document, or if it's just easier, anything that we call out as something that's a little bit,
Mhm.
like,
Yeah,
section one, I can send it to you, but we all kinda got that.
Yeah.
But anything that's kinda controversial that needs a little bit more, something fleshed
So-
out, I'll send it to you, and then maybe for the next meeting, be like, alright, I saw what you wrote, it makes sense, or, no, I think this is what it should be.
Yeah.
And-
Sometimes I'll do a PDF with no comments and then a PDF with all comments, and you can see, you know, if you don't wanna send out the Word document, then you can see
Mhm.
both.
So, what do I have here? Let's just go back to appeals and procedures. I recommend limiting this subsection is unnecessary. Anyone have any problems with 2.4?
No, she wants to eliminate it.
Yeah, cause it's kind of repeating
Yeah.
what's already there.
Second paragraph of this subsection.
Yeah, she just moved it all to section 8.
And 2.5, since the subsection details on it. So this is an either or option that I kinda want your opinion on. So Board of Appeals decisions for repetitive petitions. Since this subsection deals only with repetitive petitions, I recommend changing the subsection into just state repetitive petitions. More importantly, however, the subsection does not accurately describe the general law, chapter 48, section 16 statutory requirements. In my opinion, the town may wish to consider one of the following two options for addressing repetitive petitions in the zoning bylaw. First option is to recite the statutory language in full. Second option is to incorporate the statutory provision by reference, for example. And so I won't go read it, but if you all
Yeah.
wanna read that yourself. So I can put it in full, or I could just include this paragraph that she's recommended.
I think I like the paragraph.
I like the paragraph.
I like, anytime we're referencing, and this goes back to the same thing with the dates, is if we're referencing a MGL, is to just reference MGL. If we're just copy and pasting the language and they change the language,
Yeah, we're in trouble.
then we're no longer in compliance with it, and we have to go to town meeting.
And then we should be consistent throughout the bylaws, that
Yeah.
we never,
So I will put
Yeah.
out,
yeah.
since this was 2.5.
Can we go back to 2.4 again after
Yep.
you finished what you're doing?
She wanted to move 2.4 to section 8 entirely.
Yeah. So 2.4, she recommends eliminating 2.4, says that necessary.
Is there I guess my question to this one, when I was reading it earlier, is there any value in not necessarily having the language in there, but having a reference to another section? Because if I'm reading this, right, and I'm a general contractor, I'm someone, and I'm like, well, how do I appeal this?
Mhm.
And I don't, and it's not there, it might not be immediately clear to me to go section 8.
Right. Oh,
So-
A?
So even if we are gonna reference it in another section, it's
What
just having a
section-
headline
what is
for
section
that.
A?
In
No.
this section.
In this section
section.
saying, please reference section, where it ends up.
Well, we don't have
To-
an A.
To appeal it, or to.
Right,
Yeah.
for any appeals, please reference. So it points
I
back to,
think that would be good to do.
it's just
Yeah.
helpful.
Try to make it
right?
user friendly, yeah,
Right.
people won't find things.
No, they
Yeah.
won't, and then
We-
there will,
we have enough
you
trouble right now.
can't appeal it at
Yeah.
all because it's
Yeah.
not in that section.
Yeah.
What did she, where did
Just like
she
it's
say
fine
it
too.
So-
ties back to? I don't understand.
So appeals procedures, she
Right.
recommends eliminating this, is unnecessary in her opinion to recite the statutory public hearing and notice requirements set out in the second paragraph of this subsection, or the statutory mandatory filing decision procedures set forth in the third
Oh,
paragraph.
she's saying the second paragraph here.
Yeah, which is, what do we have that as? Oh.
Because we're not in special permits anymore, outside of special permits and variances, we're going in administration.
Section 3.
Section 3. Alright.
Well, we're not in section three.
No. So we can't even find it.
Yeah.
There was-
Oh, I see the second part. It's talking about, yeah, I think. Something like that.
So just at that point, so she's saying move the appeals and procedures into section 3 enforcement, which is that not kind of
Is that-
odd?
It's an odd place.
I wouldn't put in, like, enforcement is kind of, honestly, what, if the zoning board make a
They make a
decision,
decision, right.
and they
but
get us to
they have to
enforce it.
make
If you want to,
Allow the appeal and make the
Appealing-
decision.
You'd almost make it a 2.6, right? You have
Yeah.
Board of Appeals decisions, repetitive petitions, and then you have appeal and procedures. But if we're going to just utilize the, section 40A, subsection A, just.
even take that paragraph and just put it in here,
Right.
clean this up rather
Right,
than,
exactly.
I wouldn't move to section 3 again, because section 3 is enforcement, which an appeal,
It isn't really
procedure is
important.
not an enforcement, that's,
Right.
No.
like if someone appeals the zoning board, the planning board's decision, I don't enforce anything, it's not my purview.
Right.
They appeal it. Enforcement is what gives me the kind of, gives me the legality that if the zoning board says, hey, we want this enforced, if the planning board have a site plan, that's not, they'll go, we want the building department to enforce
Mhm.
our criteria. Any of the 40B decisions from the zoning board, we're the enforcement arm, so I don't get the, why move to section 3, I would keep it in, as you said, in section 2.
2.6, yeah.
Yeah,
We'll just make it a 2.7.
Well, it's-
Well, everything would move
well,
up, so
no,
it'd be
we're
2.6,
talking about
2.7.
2.4, not 2.6.
Right, but I would just move it back to where the other appeal the
Yeah.
decision of the board, and then you'd have appeals.
Oh.
So you just,
Combine the two.
Well, no, because this is an appeal to the zoning board, and this is an appeal of,
so you move it right in front of that. It would
No,
be-
she's talking about the appeal of, so if you're doing an administrative appeal, moving that to section 3.
Correct, which is enforcement.
Yes, which makes sense.
Okay,
So not the appeal of a zoning board decision,
it's just administrative appeal.
just an administrative appeal.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Which is usually against either,
so let me just,
I'm sure of
yeah, no, 1 second. So this is the current appeals and procedures
Mhm.
section. So, reference.
I think she's saying that middle paragraph is all
Yeah.
just pulled out from whatever the bylaw says somewhere.
Yeah, and if we
So
reference
we could
that
probably
elsewhere,
Take that somewhere else, yeah.
let me see exactly where we do reference that, so. Is unnecessary to recite the statutory public hearing and notice requirements set forth in the second paragraph of this subsection, or the statutory mandatory filing and decision procedures set forth in the third paragraph.
yeah, I think she's stating that if you just, because you're repeating what's in section 2.2,
Yeah.
the filing
The
and
current
everything.
2.2.
Yeah, you're,
Yep.
So some of that, she's saying is acceptable.
It's repetitive.
It's repetitive.
Right.
Alright, I think we're figuring this out now.
But, do you still, the first paragraph is, if that's not covered somewhere else, that is information that should be available. Who do you appeal to? And that's important to have that information unless it's spelled somewhere else. This is Board of Appeals.
Yeah, so the first paragraph of 2.4 is basically based on administrative appeal. So if you come to me for a building permit and I deny you for a zoning, very similar to,
Yeah,
With
you're
a case-
appealing your decision to.
we two cases in Pilots Way. The lady didn't agree with the permits we'd given out, they took us to the zoning board, so they appealed, then the administrative appeal
Yeah,
against us, the allowance of, she didn't appeal the permit per se, because if she appealed the permit, we'd be going to the BVRS. She appealed the permit on the basis that the zoning was incorrect. And that's what because if you appeal the permit, you go to the state BVRS, but she appealed it on the zoning, and that's what takes you to administrative appeal in front of the zoning board.
okay, so I think rather than, eliminating it, we're just eliminating the second two paragraphs and keeping the first one then. Because the others are already covered in other sections, then we can,
Could you put it in like, just put wording after the first paragraph, and the standard the standard appeals case is, or what the standard application is of the 2 weeks of advertisement, so many days to get in front of the board.
oh yeah, okay, so that's like A, like you were talking about.
Yeah, so you could say reference per time frame in section 2.2, which basically says the time frame that's mentioned in 4. So it's 14 days of the hearing. Well, we still need the 14 days of the hearing, so that we'll need.
So actually, I guess.
Yeah, we do need the
that is
14
covered in
days.
one there, basically,
Not 100. Well, it is and isn't.
well, it goes with other things, but.
Yeah.
She'll have the authority to, and that's kind of A, B, and C, and kind of what you'd be appealing for.
Because you want to keep the time frame, and Patrick, correct me if I'm going sideways on this, but on the appeals and procedures is slightly different than applying just for a regular site or zoning or planning board, because you have to appeal it the 14 days of the board, and then you have 20 days to appeal it, which that's not referenced in the first portion of the chapter 2.1 or 2.2.
I believe it is. So this is the. Alright, so I have the current zoning app.
It is.
Yeah.
It's at the end of the second last paragraph.
Yeah, and it goes over general. It's the last paragraph. Yep. Notice the hearing shall be given to publication in the newspaper within 14 days, and this is hearing. This is the posting requirements. Yeah, so the appeal is the last paragraph. So we're in the opinion of the boards, the special permit may be granted and may impose appropriate conditions, safeguards, and writings, and make them part of its authorization. Said boards may require a bond or other security for compliance with the terms of its authorization. A special permit granted under this authority shall lapse within a 2-year period. We talked about changing that. Or a shorter period, if so specified, including any time required to pursue or await the determination of an appeal pursuant to General Law, Chapter 48, Section 17, and if a substantial use thereof is not considered. But basically, rather than dwell on it, I'm just going to have a question just to add clarity. The applicant, ask town council to add a little bit more clarity to that section.
Yeah.
In writing. So I know it's 8. We gotta try to get through a few more. So 2.6, and I have a problem with this. Is basically including using this alternative text for appeal of decision of a board of appeals or planning board. So section 3. Anyone have any comments or concerns with any section?
So what was your 2.6, you're okay with
Yeah, so 2.6, it just looks like we're changing the language.
changing
to
what
what
you
we had.
want?
And I think it's a little more.
That's fine.
Yeah.
I just wanna know one thing, so it looks like we should be changing the references to state law to how, how it's being done in her notes, cause in
Yeah.
our current bylaws, we have, MGL, chapter 48, section 17,
Yeah.
instead of the more shorthand way. Just,
Oh.
that might be something we wanna look
Okay.
at going forward to be
I suppose
consistent.
there should be a consistency
throughout.
issue there.
Yeah,
Throughout
however
the
we
document.
reference it should be consistent.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm not sure what the most common,
I feel like every time I talk to a
MGL.
lawyer, they always do GL and not
Yeah.
MGL, so I guess, because
Yeah.
we're in Massachusetts, why would we reference any other state?
Yeah.
that's.
Well, because you're referencing it originally in either the first paragraph or the definitions, that it's governed by Massachusetts state
Okay,
law.
okay.
Yeah.
So that applies to everything that's
GL is
MGL,
obviously-
that's not.
The only time that you're doing it differently is if you're gonna use a CL instead of a GL.
But when you look through the book, you see we do it different ways in different sections.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we
Yep,
have to be
yeah.
consistent.
But also for ease of finding, I mean, the state's done a really good job in the last 5 or 6 years of codifying their stuff online.
Yeah. you
And
just-
being able to find it through that shorthand version
You just-
versus the much longer version that everyone uses in their official documents.
Yeah.
So I think it just makes for
Because
ease of
things
use.
pop right up when you do,
Right,
yeah.
exactly.
Without even putting the M in front of the GL, it comes, yeah.
Alright, so, section 3. I did not really have any problems with what was presented. Enforcement, any concern?
Too much of it.
I thought I put that one as a 1 when I was doing this.
Okay, good, yeah, so I, again, incorporated that, we have a red line version, I know it's a little dense, but
Yeah.
I can send that out for everyone else, section by section, just to take a look at.
Because we're still looking at the ones as somewhat softballs that we think we can just work through and then.
Then we can get ready for
Right.
the
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then go to the,
building to
Right.
like,
the next
like, we were talking this
level.
before you got here, like, it'll be a lot of grade ones, and the only tough one will be the ADUs, cause we have to get something in the warrant before February 2nd.
Right.
Yeah.
That's gonna take a
So if
lot
we can
of-
have 1 or 2 twos in that warrant, then great.
Yeah.
If we don't,
So, I
I'd
guess,
rather have,
to put a pause on what we're talking about, just so we're all can walk away with something for tonight in terms of how we think of it in phases.
Mhm.
There are 2 things, at least that I personally, I think we should cover in May, and that's incorporating the changes to the accessory dwelling units, cause the state's changed to the Affordable Homes Act, or basically a change to, section 3 of chapter 48. And then the FEMA maps are being updated, so DCR has already reached out that we need to update our floodplain overlay district, to incorporate the language of their model bylaw. That was I copied it in the email, and
Yeah, I
I sent
printed
to
it
you
out.
all.
yeah,
So section 11.
yeah.
So that language needs to be updated to be both reflecting on the model bylaw, plus had some discussion, I know just from the standpoint of like, do we want to take a closer look at that bylaw, not just to be consistent with obviously the model bylaw, which we need to be, but, you know, development within the floodplain, do we actually want to kind of regulate that a little bit differently than how we currently regulate that? There's some thought that we probably shouldn't allow for new development within the floodplain. So that might be something that I think is more or less a policy change
Yeah.
that would
Yeah,
coincide with what is just a change that we need to be compliant, but also just something to think about if we wanna get
it's
this.
like a common sense type thing.
Yeah, so I've had Lauren take a look at other towns, I think we'll try
There's a
to,
big dam there, you really wanna build your house at the bottom of the dam, cause the dam is gonna break someday.
we need to define it, and
Yeah.
so so my sister Lauren, I've had asked her to kind of look at maybe towns that also have floodplain protection overlay districts and try to get a consensus of what do they allow within that section. So if we're one of the only towns that says, yeah, if you do it, but if you provide this, this, and this, you can build in the floodplain, then we know we're an outlier, but if multiple towns are like, yeah, we don't allow for that, or we do allow for that, we wanna, alright, how do we compare regionally? Are we consistent with everybody else, or are we an outlier? And I mean, it's up to us how we wanna
How we
decide
wanna
the
see
town,
it.
but I think you also wanna take into consideration what everyone around us also
Yeah,
has.
'cause section 12, we have more say over because it's our own zoning. Section 11 is kind of tough because it's the FEMA with the
Yeah.
overlay districts, which, as long as they meet the state criteria, we can
Yeah.
touch it, to a degree. And then as to if we do allow development right in, say, section 12,
Mhm.
where do we don't want, to John's point, in front of a dam, people will build there just because they want to, sometimes you have to help people.
In
Well,
section
land-
11.
Land is land.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they'll build there, but also at the same
It's
time,
all the people who wanna build a house on the top of the cliff, and that,
For the
the
views.
cliff falls away, the house
Yeah.
falls away.
But then at the
It
same
really
time-
only matters because the FEMA controls the flood insurance, so
yeah,
if you build on floodplain, FEMA has to pay for it.
yeah, and then, again, to,
What, they get free insurance
Yeah.
or something?
The
Part of
federal
that-
federal government pays
Yeah.
for flood damage.
And part of, and
For
having the
natural
bylaws
disaster, flood
consistent
damage.
is also important for that, so I wanted to make sure we get this incorporated. So it's been a while, I was aware of this for a little while, but they kept on pushing the date
Yeah.
back of when they were gonna make the update the FEMA maps. So we got a date of July 2025, so that gives us an actual real time frame. Like, okay, we should have this on for the spring, town meeting.
yeah.
So those two changes, I think, should be incorporated, and then at least what I'm kind of feeling is, you know, do we wanna look at maybe sections 1 through 4 as its own bylaw, considering those are really administrative
Yeah.
changes?
Yeah.
So here's your,
I mean, I think we can get through them, sure, but I
Yeah.
think, like you said, like the priority should be the ADU and the FEMA,
Yep.
section 11.
Right, if you have
But like
a
section-
definite dead
section-
drop dead date type thing.
Yeah, section 2 being a 2/3, I wouldn't put a whole lot of.
but it's a
faith.
non-controversial change just to get it.
Yeah.
So that's the
Yeah.
thing, we wanna update the entire bylaw, but I mean, it's
It's like the consent agenda,
yeah.
these things all separate things, but no one's really gonna argue about them.
But if we can get through them and
If we can
all
get
the
through
grade
'em, yeah,
ones
for
out,
sure.
Get the
Yeah.
two-time sensitive
Right.
ones, and then get the really,
Yeah.
the big ones.
the ones that aren't gonna be
Yeah.
fit
The ones
too
that
hard.
aren't gonna be argued.
But they get it by, we
That
said February
yeah.
25th,
Second.
2nd?
So the two deadlines, so
We'd have,
the
we'd
main
already do
deadline.
5 meetings till then.
Yeah, so the main deadline for the ADU, we have to be in before February, to get a warrant article, cause you have to get that warrant article locked in before February 2nd.
Before
That's,
everyone starts changing. So-
well, that's the reason, if we get a warrant, if we wait after February 2nd, then if someone comes in for the ADU, it's under what the state approves. So if we have a warrant article written, then we've more control
Yeah,
over it.
once it's in there,
The rest of the stuff we can keep talking about till the end of
Yeah.
the warrant article. I'll get the exact dates of the warrant article. I believe it's May or April, sorry, March.
Mhm.
Beginning of March is when our last warrant article can be in. So if
Yeah.
we can get the ADUs, the big one, and then all the grade ones. if
Yeah, we can
them-
get out the grade 1,
Yeah.
all I was saying is that
Yeah.
section 2
The other
was a
thing also,
2/3.
Yeah.
If we can't get to it in this warrant, then we can't get to it in this warrant, but if we only have 4 or 5 meetings
Yeah.
until then, we have 2 potentially larger changes with the section 11 and
Yeah.
the ADU section. And we can get a bunch of these ones, which are still gonna take time to discuss and redline.
The other thing we have to factor in is, anything we decide, it's gotta go to planning for
Yeah.
public hearing too. So we have to factor in the time, it's gotta go to planning, we have to not have,
Right.
put in publicize it,
Would it be,
and get that done before.
would it be good to meet with the planning board? So I think the warrant for the spring opens up in like December, I believe. This past couple of years, I can remember.
Yeah,
It's either
it's
December or late, so would it make
January.
sense to try to get on a
I
planning board
think
agenda
it's
for
always,
December?
always good to do that.
Yeah.
I
Put
think
that out there.
There's something on Thursday's agenda that we're supposed to discuss something about the committee here.
Just like an
and the
update.
other one, so,
Yeah.
I put it on the,
do you put it on, okay. I
well, I
thought
put it on the
something
agenda
else
for
was
this
on.
meeting coming up,
Yeah,
and Jack asked that it be delayed till the October 3rd meeting.
oh, why did I
Where's
see something else there? I thought I saw something else concerning that, Paul had put on.
No, Paul answered the email.
Yeah, I think
So-
everyone answered
So-
it.
so
You're
there
right,
was-
I
so
remember
I think
all
So
the-
I sent an email to Jack asking that he put this, an update on this
Yeah.
committee
Yeah.
on this 19th, September 19th meeting.
Thursday.
I think
He
if we-
responded and said, can we do it on October 3rd?
So between the time, so I
So-
guess between now
But-
and October
but-
3rd, well, obviously provide an update of where we're
Yeah,
at, but if
yeah.
we're able to kind of like, you know, set up, alright, meeting on October 3rd, let's try to plan a discussion about whether or not to sponsor something in December. And that way there's enough time to be like, okay, we're going, we gotta make these changes to the ADU, we gotta make these changes to the floodplain. We got these level 1 changes, and that way the planning board can look at however we break it down. I'm saying 3 articles, but
Yeah.
maybe that one of those articles needs to be spread out a little bit more.
Yeah, yeah.
2 and
And that protects in
Yeah.
case something gets voted down and you
Yeah,
get into a.
I'm just thinking the level 1 ones,
Yeah,
I'd like to think are pretty non-controversial, but
Yeah.
who knows, everything's controversial,
Yeah.
that could be. That's
Yeah.
why I
Yeah,
try
I don't
to,
know.
lump them,
Yeah.
especially if it's 4 sections, just because we can get a big chunk
yeah.
out of the way.
Mhm.
And then going forward, I think, I mean, there's some stuff that it's just gonna be a much more in-depth.
Yeah.
We may need, I think even though it's on like section 12, really probably need to bring in, town engineering, maybe even conservation,
Conservation,
because
yeah.
that's something that's really that's a subject matter specific thing that I don't think we can just answer from a zoning standpoint.
Or,
That's
water and sewer.
water and sewer,
Yeah.
thank you, yeah.
Cause I say, but especially with section 12, it's one of those, I know people don't want to build in it, but at the same time, sometimes building or additions actually benefited.
Mhm.
So just give an example, when there's 2 projects going on in the wetlands,
Yeah.
there was an existing house there that, again, you want the water to get underground, re-filtrate it back into the ground. Older houses just have their downspouts running across the yard, but whenever you do an addition or an alteration or build new onto the lot, most of those trigger Cultec systems that put all the water underground. So building is, sometimes I know it's seen as a bad thing, sometimes in a wetlands or a wet area, the area 1, 2, 3 or 4, it can be beneficial because you're taking an old house that never recharged the water, you do an addition, now you're recharging the entire structure. So we can play one of, okay, you might want building, but you might want additions, because it does benefit it.
Right.
Even though they're covering the water.
And we see that,
Making sure it all.
All
gets-
goes down there, so take an existing house that was there, you could have a 2,000 square foot house that never put water underground, now you're putting
Yeah,
2,500 square foot house, but you're getting 2,500 into the ground.
and we see that a lot, because
Yeah.
projects come
Yeah.
up and
Section
they're,
11.
they have to keep all the water on their,
Go
on
into
their
the-
property.
Exactly,
So they're-
it's beneficial, so it does
Yeah.
work to
Where they weren't
sometimes.
doing it before, now, it'd be
Yeah.
a commercial project or.
Yeah, so sometimes it can be beneficial. So that's what, yeah, definitely to Patrick's point, to bring in engineering
Remember that,
conservation,
I mean,
water and sewer into it.
more section, like
would
one,
be good.
level 1 ones, that's
Yeah.
possible, I just know that
So
2
you-
was level 2, 3.
Would you say, so by section, I guess, I should think of this a little bit differently, so rather than just like, subset, sections 1, 2, and 3, and 4, by level 1, do we have an article that incorporates all the little minor changes throughout the
Right.
entire,
I would do that.
do that one?
So it's just, it doesn't matter, because like, going back to the very end and saying
Yeah.
we need to amend the table of contents, no one's gonna
Yeah.
care. That's a,
And those are easier things for
Right.
people to
But then again,
understand.
that one is one, until we do the other thing.
that'll be the last thing we do, is amending the
Yeah.
table
It's
of
not gonna
contents.
get.
But the example is those kind of things.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
And
So
that
that
makes
would-
it easier in the discussion, because you can just say up front, we're not really changing any substance, any meaning, we're just,
this is recodifying.
Yeah, just-
yeah.
We call it clearing it up, like something that's,
Right.
like, again, like,
Yeah.
not being mean, but the town meeting members don't really care about the wording. We do, cause as a
Yeah.
legality side to clean it up,
Yeah,
but they're more interested in, well, what does changing the floodplain cause me, what does doing this cause me, but
I think no matter what, that even the simple changes though, just as like how it's gonna look as an article, it's still gonna be numerous pages.
Right.
Because we're gonna
Yes.
have something referenced within each section, so that's fine, just as long as we understand that however that comes to the planning board and the town meeting, that, yeah, it's gonna look like a
Maybe
lot,
when
but
it
everything
comes
is supposed to be.
time for the
But
Yeah.
I think,
public hearing, whatever, we have someone that says, okay, there's a lot of pages here,
Yeah,
but it's basically correcting languages,
Yep.
altering languages, it's not changing how we're gonna do business.
right,
yeah,
And
and that's
explain
important,
that to
that's
the
also
people.
important, because you have people
So
that don't like it right now.
Yeah.
So they might wanna vote it down because they don't like it how it was.
Well, that's gonna
Yeah,
be a possibility.
yeah, it could be an interesting discussion.
yeah.
I once, when I was on the rules committee for town meeting once, we made a lot of changes because we were fixing everything, and I think a lot of members
they
had
ignore
trouble accepting the fact that they weren't changing anything.
yeah.
In other words, you really wanna make sure people understand you're not changing anything.
And
Yeah, as
on,
far
on
as-
the ADU one, I'll get, the last meeting that was there, I have the video of it, so
Yeah.
I'll make some cliff notes for everybody, just to go through the layout ADU. I also have a meeting on October 19th at the state, with the state inspectors
Okay.
and all the local commissioners around, so there's probably going 50, 60 commissioners with the state, and there's an attorney, Silverman, that's coming
Yeah.
to speak, he's a partnership of Bobowski, who's the number one firm in the state on ADUs. So we should have a lot more clarity, because right now I can give you some things, but I can't clarify because it's so new and it's so open.
I think, I'm saying to Tyler, I think, it's actually catch up, Jim, I'm
No.
sorry, but like, I think when making the change last fall, put a lot in place that makes the change now a little bit easier.
Yeah,
One of it, you know, regardless of anyone's opinion on it, there's a provision in there that you can't mandate that the owner occupy either the primary or the accessory. It's
Yeah.
coming from the state, whether or not we agree it or not.
That's stupid. Yeah.
Oh, and
that's, there is no
it's coming
defense.
from, so that's coming from the state, but we have that as its own subsection of our existing one.
Yeah, we can add it into them, yeah.
So
The
we-
standalone one is gonna be a big one, so the
This-
standalone,
Well, getting a better interpretation of whether or not we can, so I haven't really got, I mean, maybe I'm
So-
wrong.
with the standalone, it's the same as a church or a daycare, it's
Yeah.
reasonable restrictions. So the
Yeah.
most we can really put into it is, we can put in our setbacks.
Yeah.
Lot coverage we can put in.
Placement within the lot.
Placement in the lot, we can
Have
have
the
a
rip
degree.
piece in the
Lot
road.
size, we don't, because if you have an existing house and you're allowed to put in, there's lot size does not matter. So if you have a 5,000 square foot lot or a 50,000 square lot, the size won't matter. So it's limited what we can enforce. The other caveat too is, we have it as an ADU where it has to be attached, it's attached to the main house,
Yeah.
you have a passageway.
Yeah.
The new law says, no, you don't, it's a two-family, but you can't call it a two-family, that's,
Well, we wanna have the language as
um,
kind of close, we wanna have language close to what they're saying.
Yeah.
I mean, whether or not it, you know, it can be a solid wall or needs to be connected.
yeah, so they have stated that it has to be, you can do it separated, so they're putting that in there.
Yeah.
So that we don't have a say on either, unfortunately.
So it could be a standalone building?
It's a standalone building, or you can attach it to the main structure, but you can put a complete separated, so it's basically a two-family. Is that called a two-family?
Does it have to have a connector there?
Nope.
Does it?
So that printed out just kind of like a quick, this is
Yeah.
basically the language.
And it can, now is it in any district?
So that's that fight, being honest, up front, is about, so the way it's worded, it says in single-family zone
Well,
districts.
so here's one thing, so accessory dwelling unit, how they define it, this is how the new definition is, a self-contained unit inclusive of sleeping, cooking, and sanitary facilities on the same lot as a principal dwelling subject to, otherwise applicable dimensional and parking requirements. That, one, maintains a separate entrance either directly from the outside or through an entry hall or corridor shared with the principal dwelling, sufficient to meet the requirements of the state building code for safe egress. So,
That is the problem, is it,
Yeah.
so,
You can make your basement into an ADU.
yeah, we can build on top. So they say like, maintain a separate entrance,
Right.
but the problem is, one
You can't
entrance
make-
does not meet state building code.
yeah.
So you need two entrances, so either your second entrance is going through the house.
Unless
Yeah.
they make their caveat for that as well, which
This is
they've
the-
done in the past.
That's the problem, is this thing has been rubber stamped so quick through the state, at the governor's level, they think this thing's gonna solve
Well,
housing.
could you define that separate entrance of still needing to be
Yeah.
one entrance from directly to the outside and one entrance through the principal dwelling unit?
As long as it's an emergency entrance, I'm sure they can qualify a window in certain situations.
No, building code won't allow
They
that.
won't?
No, so that's where the fight with the state
That's what
was.
happened in New York.
Yeah, if you say put a second unit attached to your
Right.
house and you put a separated wall, the state said just put a wall there and you're fine. Building code says no, that has to be a two or rated wall. The plugs, any penetrations has to be rated all the way to the attic to
Right.
basement, has to be structurally independent.
Okay.
But that falls under two-family, is where the governor's saying it's not a two-family, it's not being taxed as a two-family.
Right.
So to our point, she can't dictate building code, we can, so we'll enforce our side of it, whether they like it or not, so we will make it as safe as possible. But, yeah, the way this written is you can have an entranceway outside, you don't have to put one to the main house if you don't want to. And that's where the fighting's going on at the moment, and that's why,
I think it's also where some clarity is still needed on
Big
this,
time.
so I hear what you're saying, like, alright, well, if building code says I need two entrances, I have one going from the outside in the front and then one going from the outside on the side,
yeah.
Yes.
so that's, but could I further regulate it to have one within and one out?
Now you're dictating the interior of a home, that's the problem.
Yeah.
You're dictating the interior family, which are under 48 section 3 states that.
Yep.
Which is funny, cause they just passed a new law on merger under section 8
Mm-hmm.
that says if you have a pre-existing lot that's protected under 75,000, you can't put a house bigger than 1,850 square feet, and it has to be at least 3 bedrooms or more, and that's under section 8, so they're dictating the interior of the home, well section 3 is saying you can't dictate the interior of the home. So like, they're putting in laws that contradict each other even at the state level, because they're just trying to shove this down people's throat. And that's where we're going to have to come up with a fine point, so that's why I'll be interested to see what everybody thinks, so it's October 19th, we have that meeting. Silverman, again, he's with the top law firm in the state, which will be interesting to see what towns are coming up with, because some towns already allow them. They already preempted this, but made it as a special permit. Now they're going to have to make, so Sharon has it as a special permit. Wellesley, Newton, Brookline have them all as special permits right now to put an ADU standalone.
Years.
Yeah, so now they'll have to be allowed as of right. The special permit, if you accept it, is to allow multiple of them on a lot. It's still a single family lot though, and that's
we
where.
weren't clear on that, whether or not you need to incorporate that. And I think that's also, I mean, again, probably wrong, but the way I'm looking at this too, at least I want a better understanding,
Mhm.
when it comes to detached structures.
Yeah.
You remember
And
the
rep-
shed that sold in Newton for $700,000? That was an ADU special
Yeah.
permit.
Was it a nice shed?
Sold for
$700,000.
$700,000.
And just for something we also have to look at too when we're doing the ADU is we got to watch our zoning, because the ADU says it's 900 square feet of your gross floor area. You look at our definition of a gross floor area, our gross floor area says it exempts basements and garages. So if I build an ADU with 900 square feet, I can put on a 3-bed garage. I can do a basement unfinished. That's not an that's a huge building. So we got to change. So in this it says 900 square feet of gross floor area. You go to our definition of what gross floor is, and that's what you go off of.
Yeah.
Our gross floor area does not include garages and does not include unfinished basements. So what's to stop me doing 900 square foot ADU with a 900 square foot finished basement and a 3-bay garage on the house? There's nothing. So we got to even look at our zoning to back this up as well. So that's what I'm saying. This thing's got, because again, this is what I've always said it. Developers are going to be looking at this. Individual owners are going to be looking at this. It's like most of them, like just to give you an example, the stretch code came out last year.
Yeah.
They got, well, stretch code 2 version was ridiculous. Within a week we had already worked out how to sidestep 90% of it, so had developers.
So we may want to bet, I mean, not that, it's now that it grows legs, right? And so,
Exactly.
one, I guess, the ADU, we need to have better clarification. We'll probably work with town council through the entire thing to make sure we're all on top of it. But another change that may just be needed because of
The gross
this
floor area.
is better defining gross floor area. So
Yeah.
it's small, but it's still something that
it
it's
is.
tied into
Yeah,
this.
because a lot of things do go back to gross
Because,
floor area.
yeah,
Yeah.
and if you go to gross floor area, think about our under section 6C, where a non-conforming building in a non-conforming area, you can go with a special permit 50% of the gross floor area.
Yeah.
Now, if we add garages into your gross floor area, so that the ADU can't use it, but now you can go 50% including the garage, now that structure that you were allowed to go so big can go even bigger again. So that's the thing, is it got trickle down effects to other sections of it.
There may be contradictory impacts.
Yeah, so we got to
you
find
may-
that sweet spot of,
Yeah.
do we consider a gross floor area where it's, our gross floor area includes 1 bay garage, and that is included, and then it's not as gross floor. That way it locks out the garages, so you can't use them to ADUs.
Yeah.
So we got to watch that trickle down effect, that you think you're locking it out here, but you open an avenue over here. So that's why the ADU is going to be very tricky with a lot of towns. Because that's why I just
Well, that's the caveat that, I mean, like, I don't really think about that. It's like, oh, okay, well, it's limited to 900 square feet, but if it's gross floor area, we
I'm
don't
putting a full
include
basement.
basements, why wouldn't you stop you from putting a full basement? Okay, well, I mean, it's storage.
Yeah.
Now you're adding a garage to that.
To that, the 2 bay, 3 bay, we're allowed up to 3 bay in gross in this town, so you can do a 3 bay garage. It's not included.
But could you still dictate, so I mean, if you add a garage,
Is
or,
this the actual
this is
law
like the,
as written now, or?
This is the one that was written.
yeah, it's broken down in a way that's a little bit easier
Oh.
to kind of read, but,
Okay.
Um, So that's what we got to watch for, because again,
so, yeah, John, in my email that I sent, I listed a link, the state has like an EDU resource page.
Yeah.
It's still kind of in a work in progress,
Yeah.
but they'll have a lot of stuff there
But
to,
it sounds like you're gonna find out a lot about it when you go to this meeting.
that's what I'm hoping,
in
again,
October.
top law firm, and you're gonna have probably 50 to 60 commissioners from every other town, from towns that kind of allowed it as a special permit, and what they found, because honestly, with that rule that they say, I don't have to live in the primary structure,
The question is, what
that's
the
going to open up
size
to
line do we
a lot of
want to
developers
do?
buying houses.
No, it
Right,
doesn't
right.
take time.
So think of any of the subdivisions you've done lately.
Yeah.
I can come back now,
And we
so
have to be
not to pick at anybody in particular,
Yeah.
but there's one subdivision in front of you that's got 15 houses.
Yeah,
I could put 15 ADUs in there.
Yeah.
right,
But I think there's
As
some
of right, you
things
can't
we
stop
can
it.
do for sure.
Right.
Now, if you
Some
allow
stuff can
growth
sail
floor, you put a
through,
full
I just need to
basement
be
in there,
curious, we gotta make sure.
and then you're gonna rent out
maybe-
the primary
so why we
structure,
got
because
council, why we
if I
got
had the money,
initial
I don't,
contract
but if I
is-
did,
yeah.
I'd buy that house
Can they
investment,
square
Yeah.
that
I have a
way?
full house that I could probably rent for 5,000 a month.
Like, I can go through and
I've got
do
an
my
ADU that I
lines
could
right
rent
now,
for probably
well,
3,000 a month.
Yeah,
Anything that doesn't.
But if I'm allowed to
require
put garage and everything else onto it,
like a
and the
hard
basement's
discussion,
unfinished,
it's just a, like,
honestly, I'm gonna finish that
change.
basement
We
on a
have that
Saturday
just
when no one's
standard
around,
article now.
and make
Yeah.
more living space down there without anybody knowing about it, and rent that even for more. And that, I'm gonna close that door, so it's 900 square feet, that's all you're getting,
Five or
because
six.
I don't want the
There's
intent
straight ones,
to-
no
to be able to
changes,
have a
just
full
say,
height
you know,
basement that
we
you're going to
reference the
finish
right
on
subsection.
QT and
Yeah.
create more rooms, bless you, more
Which
living
is
space.
all that-
And this,
that's
so
also-
this
but
is
then
a whole
also
lot of time for us,
theory
to-
of
we have to do it by the,
Maybe we save some
February
funds
2nd.
for-
That's what I'm-
So we just
where we
need
can
an
sort of
article in front of the
pass
planning
it
board
back
for
to
you
pass,
to
and
sponsor
we have a tougher
and
one.
get a warrant article. Once you sponsor and we have a
Yeah,
warrant
I mean,
article written,
I also
then
think is
the warrant
when
article
we-
comes
we
into
have-
law.
oh, really?
So when you
Even
Wherever
before
it
it's
ends up,
approved,
yeah, but it's
Yes.
also.
Once you have it
like,
on
say we
paper, it's
make these
going.
changes in May.
yes,
well,
so
now
that was
we're
always the
working
fight
on
people
bylaw
had. When did a
that's
law come into effect? Did it come
somewhat
into
there,
effect
it's
and you
still
wrote it?
tied in,
Did
so
it come
I
into
almost
effect when
wanna say
town
that
meeting
once you
approved
get
it?
to be-
Or did it come into effect
get
when
that
you went to
skeleton
the AG's office for
together,
approval?
now we're kinda-
Under 48, section 8, and I got clarification on that because that was always a grey area. It comes into effect from the warrant article is written. If someone wants to move ahead and do it without going to town meeting, you're going ahead at risk. So if town meeting deny it, then you'd have to take everything apart. With ADU, it can't be denied.
So they're really pushing this fast through the.
Oh, they went, yeah,
It's a
they're,
part of the housing shortage issue, you know.
yeah, this
trying
is just to wipe out single, in my opinion, it's literally designed to wipe out single family homes in this state. 100% designed to destroy single family homes. And that's what it is intended for. And that's why I think it's been pushed with those, not like, again, Patrick's description there's not a lot of description because they just rubber stamped it to get it through. And left a lot of holes that we need to, as a town, got to protect ourselves from it. And
Right.
we have, because again, it's under Dover, the same section 3 as Dover, which is churches, which is churches,
So it's by right, anywhere. Just
yeah, you cannot
any
stop it.
residential.
Like, you
Yeah.
cannot say no to it.
So, yeah, it's just to kind of, I know we can go into it, I just wanna make sure we get a little bit of gist of every
Yeah.
section before, cause I know it's almost 9.
Yeah,
Um,
it's actually, yeah.
Section 4, a lot of this I thought probably needed further discussion and review.
I think we need to, I think districts is wildly important,
Yeah.
for a lot of reasons, but
Mhm.
I think unless someone else thought it was super easy and it could be a 1, I think we say 4 for, you know, after the May.
Yeah.
Well, the split boundary laws probably has to be clarified somewhat.
Yeah. So, yeah, we've already.
But districts also goes to a lot of other, you know,
Oh,
there's,
yeah, the
The
districts is.
highlighted ones in the zoning book, those are ones that are to be added, or need to be added.
Yeah, they should,
Yeah.
they're added now, I think I'll make sure to get rid of the highlights. I think online I got rid of the highlights, just the ones I printed for you though.
MCMOD, whatever, overlay district.
Yeah, cause we.
I had the same for use regulations being
I just
made, to agree.
Noted one thing
Yep.
on the very beginning of section 4.
Okay.
It says there's a title called symbol title, the very beginning of section 4. Oh, not,
Oh,
not
in the zoning,
in the
yeah.
actual zoning.
Alright, 1 second.
Three now. Yeah, 14. See where it says symbol title? Symbol.
Yeah, yeah, oh, yeah,
goes
yeah,
to
yeah.
that title. I think you need like a slash or a dash or something in between, maybe to just clarify, that's the symbol, that's the title.
It's not just a name symbol title.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get you.
It might be just clearer if that was.
No, I agree, or almost, you can't.
I don't know if
put
you
it-
wanna stick it over there, but.
Well, I would almost
if
say
it's-
like,
Yeah, put
could you
it-
centerize that and put symbol above?
That would
All
be
right,
great, yeah.
right.
We're gonna.
I thought it'd be simpler to do it the other way, but it's not that much more difficult.
Yeah.
It makes sense, cause then they talk about symbol, is it, when this says symbol title, what do we mean by symbol, or what do we mean by title? Just a little more clear.
Yeah.
Is everyone okay with tabling the districts, because it's gonna be a more of an intensive conversation until after this go around where we solve these?
Yeah. So yeah, I just for sake of time, we'll try to touch on everything really quick. And when we leave today, I'm gonna try to get red line versions of some of the things we want a little more clarity on, that we can just be like, all right, one, this is what it was, this is what we're proposing, we're all good with it, moving on, and then
Yeah, 'cause
anything
it
that's gonna be more talk. we'll just-
raises some interesting questions, we have to discuss what's unobtrusive and,
Use regulations,
most of them.
same
That's-
thing, one and
That's gonna be a problem.
yeah, section 1 and 2, so anything to do with like just,
That's a three, yeah.
That's a
you
three.
oh,
said-
that's a 300%, but,
Yeah.
those changes dealing with
What's that?
removing the whole like 5-A and just making it consistent with it, like,
Yeah.
that's easy, that's a change that I don't think is very
And even
controversial.
Some minor things like that, yeah.
Yeah.
So
See,
the
the
thing
Johnson
is,
So
line,
reorganize
the
it.
slash between
Yeah,
symbol and
restructure.
type,
Yeah,
that could be it, that even that little change could be put in with the front group, and then we can
Oh, yeah,
concentrate
yeah, yeah.
more on the bigger stuff, so.
yeah,
yeah,
It's
well,
true.
even that, that's probably not a lot. But at 5, it's gonna be tricky, because one, you have to look at the whole and say, okay, where is each subdivision?
Yeah.
And then the subdivision below that, whatever. How do you choose the layers?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
Oh.
all
Just
of
because
five
it
is
is
five and
backwards,
everything.
you know,
I would almost say, let's try to put it out of our mind
Yeah.
right
Yeah.
now. Let's just,
I mean, in my mind, and I don't know if you guys see it the same way, I'm thinking of it as, all right, we have a warrant coming up in 5 meetings, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's no way.
What can we accomplish and put on that agenda, and then everything else, not gonna think about, other than making notes of things that we need to change in it by making changes on these, and then so we can come back to that and handle that in the next one.
alright.
Because I don't think they don't need to be in order for anyone to really, at the end of the end document, after all that's done, however long it takes,
Yeah.
hopefully not very long, but as long as it takes, that's what matters. Like, if we choose to jump around in this warrant,
Yeah.
it is what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely, as you said, going forward, as Patrick had said, get level 1 for the first meeting, cause
Right.
something like section 5, there's probably gonna be a lot of change, and if you go to town meeting with a book, half the people are gonna fall asleep, half the people are just gonna get sick of it and just say.
No matter how you do it, it's gonna be a lot, but at least if you can come away being like, this first one looks like a lot, but
Yeah.
let's explain to you that this is all due to the fact that it's inconsistent, it's editorial,
Yeah,
it's not
scrivener's
needed,
errors, just to
Yeah.
clean it up.
Whereas, hey, here's 200 pages and we made some big stuff in there, go look and find, you
Yeah.
know, you don't want that.
Yeah.
Really quickly though, so obviously, in lines we just talked about, 6C, is this needed? 5C, I'm sorry, 5C? This is, I always don't understand this section.
No.
Maybe you can answer this one for me. The fenced in commercial structures.
Enclosures, it took me a while to figure out what they're talking about.
She referenced, it's kinda like, well, you describe some stuff, but not everything.
Yeah, true, it's probably her idea of saying what doesn't need to be enclosed is maybe a better idea.
Yeah, cause there's just too much, I almost thought, do you even need it?
Well, that's it, cause usually site plan, through the planning board, if they say, well, you wanna put a fence around it, you need a fence here, most of this is covered under site plan, so.
Yeah, it's almost like it's on a case by case, I mean, I get it, if something doesn't need site plan, it's just a
Yeah.
use taken over and they
Like
wanna have a
it's-
fence.
Basically, the idea is you want everything inside of the building.
Yeah,
And how you gonna
Except
allow
for, you know,
outside of the
plants growing in the soil, well,
do you want
yes
a fence?
and no though, right? I mean, you have, but
Yeah.
indoor.
Like automotive parking lot,
I don't remember this being this way, to tell you the truth.
Yeah.
it's a section, honestly, I've been here 6 years, and it's been very, I don't know anybody's come near, we've looked in it, but again, to say like, there says automotive parking lots,
my-
like big cars on Route 1, they're not gonna put a fence around it, because they want to see their product being shown, so it's kinda one of those.
So my takeaway though, I didn't even think it was needed. But that's,
Well,
I
it's
think-
not so much that, it's saying it has to be completely enclosed building.
Yeah.
It isn't just that it has to be a fence around it, it has to actually be in a building.
Yeah.
Um,
All uses.
Yeah, but if, you think about what it, what was the intent of having it in there? What was it trying to prevent, right? It was trying to prevent an open air market.
Yeah, something like that, or a bazaar, yeah, same thing, yeah.
Right, so,
Uh,
Well, like exterior lights. Well, yeah, of course, exterior
Or
lights don't need to be
exterior
inside a building.
Right.
They're not exterior
Yeah.
lights. Plants growing inside. We're not going to dictate agriculture. That's a whole different can of
They don't
worms.
like you, yeah, it's no, they don't like everything.
Yeah, so like even one of the
falls
things like,
after that, yeah.
again, to John's point, a completely enclosed building, and one of the things is a gas station, dispensing of fuel. Like, you're not putting a gas station inside, like,
Right.
So why do you
A
need
lot
to
of
say
it-
it?
yeah,
so
why
I
do
say
you
you
need
can
to say
do
it?
that.
Yeah.
but
So
they have
because
that
if you give,
exception.
I think if you give,
Yeah.
I think if
Because if
you,
you
but no
don't
one's
say
gonna
it-
go for a
if you
gas
don't say it,
station,
someone will
enclose
do
it.
it.
But it says that except for dispensing of fuel, you
But
know,
also, if you put
except the following.
Yeah,
Right, but if you don't say
So-
that, they're gonna
Yeah,
say
then-
you have to build a gas station in it.
Well,
So
or you
have,
could-
you
or
have
you
to
could
have
use-
exceptions.
Yeah.
right,
I
or,
just want.
Yeah.
I mean, if you think,
Yeah.
so think about, Home Depot on Route 1, right? They, outside on their parking lot, they
All
have
the sheds.
they have the plants and the sheds, right?
Yeah.
Those fall within this. If this wasn't here and there wasn't, and it wasn't Home Depot, it was Bob's, you know, whatever. And now all of a sudden he's putting pallets of things everywhere because he has the ability to, right?
well,
So I guess the question is less of what it, like this is saying that you obviously can pump gas outside. You can obviously look for cars outside. These are obvious sort of things, right? But what is it not allowing?
So, H, you know, allows you to have any kind of goods, products, materials, equipment necessary or permitted for, in the permitted use, so.
So I
So
guess
if you were a
my
hardware
goes-
store and you were
Well, you-
putting.
right.
Yeah, because it's referring to is within that section of the table of use. You already dictate what our what's
Mhm.
you know, open display of
in that
goods are.
section.
So
So if we're gonna remove it, my question would be,
You don't want to,
really
yeah, if
looking
you're
in.
removing it, you gotta be careful.
Right, is
Yeah.
what is it trying to prevent?
Yeah.
Like, are you preventing a dance studio from being outside? Are you preventing a music store from being outside? Maybe, I don't know.
Good.
What is the thing that is preventing versus
And
what
are
is
those
it
things
allowing?
but do you have
problems?
other things that also
Yes.
kind of like you know, so like I'm just gonna pick like gas stations.
Yeah.
You can't have an interior gas station that's gonna have to deal with a bunch of other
Well, that's why
different
it's-
regulations.
That's why this is an exception to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but again, most of them fall back into the table use, so again, just for outdoor storage falls back into table use of 25% in that. Again, just to this point, if you're doing a brand new building, which you are on Route 1, take the car barn that's coming,
Yeah.
that's going before the planning board. The buffer zones cover you, the fences cover you, so we can already dictate those. So it's kind of, by keeping this, again, the few years I've been here, no one's ever gone to this section. We've never even stated this section. But to your point, Tyler, if we take it out, what does it open up? I don't, because
What would prevent me, I guess, not to cut you off, but
Yeah.
what would prevent me from buying or renting a parcel of open space and
Mhm.
creating an open air dispensary?
Well, the
But
fact that we
dispensary.
don't allow dispensaries.
Dispensaries,
So-
Well,
yeah.
I'm just using it
So,
like.
yeah.
There's other zoning, I think,
Other
that
zoning
kind of
back
like
it up to a
covers.
degree.
Or
So
an
used
open air music studio.
So we're zoning again, so the use table will
Right.
protect us, so
So
as long
if
as we
I-
can take those 10 pints or 12 pints and put them back to, so again, the bottom 5, all reference our table 5B1. Exterior signs as herein permitted falls under chapter 7, so we have the exterior signs, we can control that, so.
So maybe
kind
it's
of-
not necessary.
That's what we're saying is,
Or you put those back
I
into
think
other
you're
sections that
saying
where it
that's
I think
becomes.
I think we'll take a closer look at
Yeah.
it, just to make sure.
just, go through the
Yeah.
10 or
Yeah.
12 pints and see, so dispensing of food, beverages, goods at a drive-in or stand where authorised, that's already under a special permit through the zoning board.
Mhm.
So is there really a need for that? And go through each one, accessory outdoor dining, that already goes through a limited site plan where it's authorised, so that's already covered with limited site plan. So A and B are kind of, again, dispensing of fuel, lubrication fuels at a garage service, that's all special permits. So some of these plants grown in the soil is probably agricultural, so
It's protected
I ain't
use.
touching that with a
Yeah.
10-foot pole, it'll kill me. Automotive parking lot. Yeah, if you're doing automotive parking lot, you're buying a piece of land, going, I'm going to put parking here. That again is in table 5. and you're creating a new use, so you're going before the planning board for a site plan.
Especially if it's a structure.
Yeah, they're gonna put exterior lights, they're gonna put fences, they're gonna put setbacks. So if we can go through all, whatever, 10 or 12 of those, and say, yeah, they're covered in another section of it, then is there any real use for this section?
And what
But
she's,
I guess my
So
only
she's
other
saying
question would be,
what
is-
needs to be
Looking at it
enclosed.
once-
right,
Yeah.
but I guess my question, for any exclusionary, section, right?
Yeah.
Is that at some point or another, and it'd be interesting to see if someone knows when or how or why, but why was this put in?
Why
Someone was
was it
trying to
put in?
prevent something.
Yeah,
What were they
something.
trying to prevent?
So
and notice what she
And when we
says,
get
she's
away
not,
with it, who will remember what it was and go back to it?
It's gotta be somewhere in a town meeting.
and notice what she's saying
Yeah.
though, in her write-up, she's saying, instead of having a list of exclusions, you should just say what does
is
apply.
allowed.
Right,
So the question is,
Yeah.
what do we want to allow?
Yeah.
but then
To
this
be-
goes to NIMBY, right?
Yeah.
And so,
And
like,
that's very well could be what it was.
and it really could be, right?
Yeah,
They
it
didn't
could.
want something that,
'Cause it's,
but like, the one problem that always sort of arises with NIMBY or anything like that is that you're never going to be able to exclude everything that you don't intend, or you might unintentionally exclude something that you did want. And so with, not to get, I guess we're getting pretty deep in the weeds on one section, but, what was the actual intent when the town put this in? What were they trying to prevent? And is that still an issue today? And has it done anything that, for our benefit, or will it in the future, to just remove it entirely and just take these 10 sections and put them where they should have been in the first place? Or is there a reason that we're not seeing? Because we might not see it here, sitting here
Yeah.
right now, but
Well,
it was put in there for a reason.
Yeah,
Open the
it could be a good reason, or just a
office.
Could be.
personal
I think
reasons,
they
because
still
I
have
don't like you, you're not getting
It
this.
seems like a personal one.
Yeah.
It seems like it's
So we
one
can
thing
go
that's
back
not,
to, like,
that's not on that
1950
list that we don't know what it is.
Yeah, so the only thing kind of liking it is the exterior
See if
G, the
this
exterior
was
lighting,
there.
where it will range, but we can,
Get an idea.
if
of
we
how
can
much
find, say,
that
two of these things are good, or
I
three,
know just from
can we
the,
add them to another
they
section?
had to have
Absolutely.
edited this when they changed the zoning, well, let's see, was it
2008,
2008? Because, well,
Yeah,
yeah, the
but-
table of use, the whole structure changed.
yeah,
at
there's a whole
some point.
rewrite in 2008.
So the references they have here refer to the current references, so they
Yeah.
had to have made changes here back in at least
So I guess
2008.
I
But I don't know
guess-
if they just changed.
so it would have been a different
Different.
section number that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was looking through all the
Because the old
changes.
ones had a totally different.
Yeah,
So I mean,
Yeah.
I'd be interested to
Well,
see if
the
there's
new
town
ones
meeting
are
notes
more-
from 2007, when this was actually
Brought
heard.
forward.
Right, correct.
Because someone had to explain why this was important.
yeah.
I
And,
can look into that.
Yeah.
and just out of curiosity of like, what
Yeah.
is it preventing? Are we
Well,
inadvertently
they'll-
allowing that thing
Yeah.
that this person's been begging for?
Yeah, then
Yeah.
again, the only thing I like on it is the exterior lighting,
Right,
which is always good to reflect away from streets, but again,
that should be in another
That's
section.
part of the.
but that could be another section, or
Site
that's
plan
part of the site plan as well, so,
In section
They
13.
have
Yeah.
to
Right.
focus them in.
yeah. So that's what I'm saying,
Yeah,
if we can find another portion that backs this up, and each of all those sections goes, yeah, it's backed up under here, it's backed up under here,
Right.
then if we can't find anything that's why it was brought in,
These are
can
all
we just
the
remove
exception
it?
too, so what needs to be,
They're preventing a pet grooming place off of Route 2.
yeah,
It's
it's
just,
almost
there's
like
gonna
you're
be some
removing
random-
this though and
something.
saying the following uses shall be enclosed, is that more specific?
No, because if you're using shall be enclosed,
Or
it's too,
One, don't use the word shall. Shall is a bad word.
no, if
Lawyers
you use
hate
may, then it's
shall.
an optional. I love shall, by the way. Shall versus may is wildly important.
Yeah.
The only problem with putting a inclusionary versus exclusionary clause in there is if you're trying to do something and you wanna include it, you might be unintentionally or unintentionally including other things in addition to, or in excluding those same things, right? Because you'd have to define more, right? If you're saying that you may enclose certain things, we'd have to list all the things versus excluding just 10
it's
things.
easier, yeah. Alright, so that one maybe just like I said, we can,
I'll try and find the minutes
Try to
in
find it.
2007, see when, I'll find the date when
It'd
it
be
came
interesting
in.
to see what it was actually that they were trying to do.
I
Yeah.
found one or two that were.
that might be
100%.
better than just trying to go, cause we, just on the basis of looking at quickly, we can all figure out that like, okay, that's covered there, that's covered there.
Yeah.
But why is more
Right.
important than
Yeah.
trying to disprove.
Someone's renting something.
It could be that, or could honestly, because we have such a crossover in our zoning that someone locked onto that one thing and put it in there and not realising it's protected everywhere else. Because we had that with when Patrick done the ADU. People were saying, well, why they can do this? I'm like, no, it's protected under this section, it's protected under that section, it's protected under the building code. And going, if you were to put everything in there, you'd be using a wheelbarrow to bring the code book in for one section. So that's the whole thing. So when we rewrite zoning, it mightn't look to the public that, oh, well, I can do this, and you're like, no, you can't, because in section 3 it stops you, in section 7 it stops you. As long as we think of that it's covered somewhere else, then we can either add it or remove it. So as that we can use the zoning and the building to
I think that's
cover ourselves.
That's kind of the problem with some elements of the zoning is we add too much to try to think you're covering yourself,
Yeah.
but you contradict yourself elsewhere. You didn't
Yeah.
catch it, or
So
you,
like accessory structures.
And
They're not
ADU,
connected.
they can rubber stamp because they wanted to run on it.
Yeah.
So that's
Well,
why
the other
it
thing
passed
is-
when it passed, and that's why they.
Oh, yeah.
It's kind of a standalone thing,
That
we don't have to do
recent
it right
second,
now,
like,
it's
perfect
something
day
we
in
can
the
go
middle
back
and
and
freak everybody
fix.
else.
It
Yeah.
isn't an immediate fix.
Oh yeah, that's
Oh, no.
that could just be left. Very quickly, I went through, what's it called? I know earth removal is a kind of a big.
Yeah, that's
Thing that's
definitely
kinda
one, we want to,
Yeah, we're not
right
gonna
now,
cover this at now, but
Yeah.
but
Did you guys have, I had everything in section 5 as a 2 or 3 as well.
Yeah.
You guys-
Yeah.
So I mean,
Yeah.
is it
Yeah,
safe to
the
assume that
5
we
is-
can,
yep.
we can table this till
5 is
after the
gonna
first?
yeah, because we have some big
Sometime in
sections.
2025.
Five and five and
Especially-
six.
No, the only thing I had was section 5H, but that's just a small thing.
Yeah,
We can table it until after this
Yeah,
one.
I would good there.
definitely, yeah, because again, like it says
Well,
Patrick, earth removal is a big thing, because
Right.
Yeah, that was just a
ours is
clerical
not
change.
change, and we've had a few
5H.
cases that left this thing open.
Section.
That's, I'm not saying
Oh,
bring it
no.
up. That was the only thing I had going for in section 5.
Um,
But I think we should table the whole thing.
Okay.
Just
Yeah.
table 5.
5,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we've
Yeah,
tabled
the
2,
idea-
we've tabled
The
5,
idea
and,
is taking the buffer zones out and moving into
Yeah.
section 6 is probably a good idea.
and
Yeah.
I had,
Outside.
and under the same principle, I had tabling 6 because of the same.
It's the same, we
Yeah.
got a lot of issues.
Yeah.
A lot of issues, a lot of discussion.
The
that we
only
won't
thing I
have
guess
time
if
for.
we were to include any changes from those ones as part of like the easy one is just the
The numbers.
the numbering thing.
Right.
Yeah.
I
There
know
are
there's
some-
one change I really wanna get through, but it's gonna raise lots of issues.
There are some
Which
small,
one do you want?
64A.
64A.
Not, she doesn't really have much on that
Does
here.
she?
Number of lots in building,
Yeah, we've talked about this before, and I
Yeah.
know there was something, what was it, a few years ago, when it was much more prescriptive, I don't know what happened, I wasn't here at the time, but it
I
seemed like,
think just how this is back to the use table needs to be clarified.
well, that and just.
that's a straight, well, that's, I've done a bit of digging on this, the lots and this section and section 5 on multi-families in the GR was put in there as a personal go after a developer, or someone had a fallen out with him, and that's why it was put in there. This is one of the things you were talking about, Tyler, of why was something put into the zoning. Everything I'm finding says this was kind of fast tracked in and left it open, and something's not very clear. But yeah, it mixes section, to John's point, mixing section C4 mixes back with 5, the use table.
Yeah.
But it's also the definition and lack of understanding of some parts that mix people up. We get people in here all the time about it.
I think it should be prescriptive, and I think that's I hate
Yeah.
hate language that's like the character of the area. That's way too subjective,
Mhm.
and it opens up a door of just like, all right, well, I can pick and you can pick and choose a project. To be perfectly honest, when you have
Yeah.
language that fits in the general character of the area.
Yeah.
Well, what's the general character if it's in the general residence district?
Yeah.
General character is like, well, you can have multifamily, 2 families,
Yeah.
3 families. Oh well, this area is all 1 family, so I think it should be this.
No.
Well, how is that the so I think that's why whatever happens here, my opinion, at least I would take is I think it should be prescriptive in however
Definitely.
you allow for.
And I think it should be opened up more, because we ran the numbers
Yeah.
on GR. The GR in this town, I think it's like 7% of the lots can only have 2 families or more.
Now you're going back
Yeah.
to 5. and-
Yeah, but now you're going, but that's the thing, it trickles back
The
to
lots are
5.
only so big, they were built a long time
Yeah.
ago, the lots are small, the houses were small.
Small. And we got the
You
depth for
can't
that.
really do much, they were built around the mills.
Well, this is where I think it's gonna play back to, if we don't fix the GR and the lot sizing and the numbering and the, like, to get multiple lots on, or houses on a lot, which GR is designed for,
Yeah.
we actually have it closed down to, you need to hit the bullseye to get it. Now with ADUs coming in, if you don't help people and get the GR working the way a GR is, like we did have it at last year where someone said, well, I have a single family home, I don't want a 2-family beside me. Then you shouldn't be in a GR.
Right.
I don't live in a condo building because
Yeah.
I personally should be living near people. I have a single family home because when I go home I close my door and I'm happy out at home. I'm not a people person. I done condos and we need to buy a house. So if you buy in a condo, you can't complain about your neighbour next door making noise because you bought in a multi-story building. GR is designed for either a multiple unit building or multiple single family homes. That's what it's designed for. So I think we need to go into that, tweak our numbers, because our numbers right now are atrocious. For buying GR is pointless if you're looking for multifamily. It doesn't help you, but it's designed for multiple
You're talking
units.
about, was it 5?
It's 15,000 for like a single.
Oh, the
building and
one
all
that has
that.
the board, the multifamily requirement is, well,
Ridiculous.
in the GR, it's 10,000 per sheet to us, per each additional dwelling unit, which I'm telling you is an insane amount.
It's ridiculous.
In terms of, and then the 4 other provisions, a 50-foot buffer.
Yeah.
You don't, that's more than we have if you wanna be next to like a chemical plant, like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean, like, that's.
It is very,
You're right in that.
Yeah.
And it
It's-
is but large compared to what some of the other.
like industrial.
Industrial,
Yeah. Like if
residential.
you're industrial
it isn't
residential, you
that
don't even
much.
have that.
You're right.
No.
It's ridiculous. So
You're right, that is a little large.
and to your point, where the lots are in GR very, very small, that crucifies a lot. Like if you have a little lot that's not.
Yes, if you have a little, well, if you have a little lot, you don't have enough room to.
Well, think about it. Minimum frontage for a GR is 100 feet. So if you have 100 feet and you have 50-foot buffer each side,
Yeah.
So,
you can't build it.
so guys,
Yeah.
just
In the interest of time, so table 6.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Table
Big time.
size, yeah.
table 6, 7, I thought the changes were pretty minor,
I didn't really get to this.
that's signs, yeah. We can discuss this in more detail next time, but I mean, I can give you all these.
I think, yeah, I think
two,
she
just-
said basically it's signs,
Signs are
she doesn't
prescribed
really
by
have an
statute.
issue. on it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But-
I thought it was enough to discuss.
It's enough to
Signs are
discuss.
also prescribed federally because it's freedom of speech.
Yeah,
So
that was on a case.
It's
Someone
just a
wants to make
question of
sure.
the, like, the lighting and the signs and stuff, that seems to be.
there's some things
Yeah,
that, but
that's
that goes-
something I think
yeah.
more like, she didn't cover, but we could have that discussion in terms of more substance things in the signs.
I know zoning had something for the Chick-fil-A, I think,
Yeah.
recently, but I think, I
Yeah.
don't know exactly what the.
It had to do with multiple, so we only
Multiple
allowed
signs
2 wall
and
signs.
the lighting, because
Right.
you're allowed
Yeah.
use a white light. And Chick-fil-A, we know we want a red
Red
light, so
light.
they had to go for that colour. You're allowed to use a white light behind your sign.
Yeah.
They wanted red lights.
Oh, so
But there's a
that was-
prescriptive remedy within the
Yeah.
code as well, so like, it's not completely limiting. I mean, I think we can probably put 7 in with this, it's not a,
It's
it's,
potential, yeah, like.
it's
I'd
not
say
gonna be it's not gonna be a huge
The
topic.
parking really
I'd say 1.
Park,
doesn't
yeah,
seem
it's
to
a
have
1.
a lot of
Definitely.
issues. It's complicated,
The cleaning up the complexity in part.
Yeah.
yeah.
I think, I mean,
Straighten it
8,
out a little
8
bit.
goes to a lot of other things, so I
Yeah.
mean, and there's a lot of, in
Tying
today's
back
day and age,
section
Ties back to
8 to
5 and everything,
use.
yeah.
Cause
So-
we have,
I would put 8 as a table, just because it's tied directly into all the others that we're
Yeah.
talking about
If
being
you're
more
gonna change 8,
difficult.
then you're gonna be changing 5 with it, probably.
And same with 9 being non-conforming situations, so that
Yeah.
by the time we
That-
get through them all, we're gonna be next.
There's an awful lot
Yeah,
of lines.
because I'd like to
Yeah.
change some of the numbering in 8 on the amount of parking spaces required.
yeah,
Because we have a prime example right in the middle of town now that if they're following our parking perfectly
yeah.
and there's water over it,
Right.
Yep.
like if.
That's also the
Well,
most.
you're talking about for
Well,
residential,
they
yeah.
didn't build enough parking spaces into that place. yeah.
Well, the thing is too, if you look at it as a whole, every big building in town that has gone forward has gone for a waiver to reduce the parking. And the one
Huh.
building that's coming is Weston Spring, which meets the parking perfectly. It's 100% meets zoning,
Yeah.
but it's a 2-story big garage. If we had reduced the parking count, you wouldn't have that big structure, you'd have ground floor parking. It'd be a lot cleaner, but right now they meet our zoning perfect.
I think so what Jim's getting at is the whole, if you're looking at residential parking, and I think this was a zoning article, I know it failed last year, 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Oh, reducing it for.
I
Residential.
I
near,
used to doing like
near
a,
the trains or
Well, not
something.
even training,
well,
just
parking
see-
schedule based upon if it's a
residential.
multifamily.
Yeah,
So I mean, basing it on bedroom counts within mixed use or multifamily
Yeah.
developments as opposed to, you know, 2
Dwelling
units
units.
per 2
Per
spaces per.
dwelling
yeah.
Yeah, thank
So
you.
the
Yeah.
perfect example is Union West.
Yeah.
They have 95 units.
Yeah.
They need 190 parking spaces. There's a 2-story building up there for just a parking garage. Everybody's going nuts over it. Why? It meets our zoning.
Talking Spring and West?
Spring away, sorry, yeah. I was getting confused.
Yeah, so
Well, we know
Um,
where you're at.
But if that had, again, Patrick he went 2 years ago, if that was reduced 2 years ago, that wouldn't be that'd be just grade level parking, that was all would be there.
Yeah.
But nobody wanted
Their
it.
first plan was definitely out there, but it could have worked.
And it met the zoning perfectly.
Yeah.
Now this big building actually meets our zoning perfectly as well. So like, not be
Well,
mean, but
height's gonna be an issue, I think.
no, we actually, I've been talking with the architects.
Unless they've changed
Well,
their
it's-
plan.
But we
Yeah,
shouldn't,
yeah,
yeah, we
yeah,
shouldn't
yeah.
get
So,
into.
so we're all good with tabling parking
Yeah.
for post?
Parking eight,
Yeah.
9, 8.
So I don't know if you have a list of the ones that we wanted to include on, to potentially include on this warrant, right? So we had 1, 3, 7? Is it 7?
Seven.
Sign, yeah,
Yeah.
7.
1, 3, 7.
Parts of two.
Well,
Hard,
Oh,
honestly,
yeah,
hard.
like, other than edits, yeah,
two's
part
part
of
of
2.
it done, if we get.
You could probably do 2.
Look at
Yeah.
it.
So 1, 2, 3, 7. You have parts again, like some of them
Yeah,
are minor,
parts.
so parts of
Parts of 4, 5.
4, yeah,
Because of the numbering in 5,
5,
Mhm.
6.
6, yeah, just the numbering.
I'd have to take a
Well,
closer
5 and
look at
6
8.
in that part.
8 is the parking. And then 9 is the, we would,
Definitely need
It's a-
it.
that's gonna-
Non-conforming
right.
situations, that's gonna be a big one, I think.
9, yeah,
9
9
is
could have a
the,
lot
9
of
I had a 3.
Yeah.
ties.
And 10 I had a 3.
Yeah, 10 I
There-
feel like you can just blow up.
there's a couple of-
I
Well-
just-
Depends if you break 10 up.
that's what I kinda,
Yeah.
oh, at least, I think she referenced it, almost, it's a catch-all, so do we want a better,
Well,
you
Better
know,
cut.
common driveways I would
separates
put in parking, right?
if you remove common driveways?
I
from
don't think
parking?
it's really fixed there so much, but,
She mentioned too, having those, tying it back to site plan review.
Yeah,
As
that's
well.
true.
yeah, it is tied into site plan.
Yeah.
Oh,
Oh, let me bring it up.
the thing is, it happens so, well, technically it happens so unfrequently, but it actually is happening all the time.
Mhm.
And no one's calling it a spade to spade. It's a
So,
common driveway.
so this is, the design standards could also be incorporated into regulations or sub-pact of the planning board subdivision regulations
Yeah.
Potentially,
with respect to design standards. So, I mean, that's something that I think.
that's a possibility, I suppose, yeah.
But it would take more discussion.
Right.
to
Yeah,
really-
more discussion.
So we table that one as well, and then, but we need 11 and ADUs, which is not in here, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so, I mean, that's,
Floodplain.
yeah, well,
Plus,
there's
I-
parts of 5, so
Yeah.
5, 3,
Yeah.
11.
Then site plan review is the 13.
13, yeah. 14, obviously definitions
And
which will be in it.
there's a couple of typos in here, you know,
Yeah.
Yeah.
which we could have changed, like paragraph 6B, you know, should it be the criteria listed in 13.7 or 13.8? You know,
Which
it's
one
just,
is, oh, in her,
in her, yeah, her
Paragraph
document.
6B,
If you look paragraph 6B, come down on section 13. Section 13.
Yeah.
So section 13, paragraph 6B,
yep,
you'll see that it's referencing
it might,
the wrong section for the waiver plan submission
Oh, I see,
criteria.
so 13 should be.
So again, we want to
so
fix
there's
that.
some changes
Yeah.
to site 13 that may be,
Yeah, typos and things, yeah.
yeah,
Correcting
And
typos.
unless we're, I mean, we gotta remember that if we're referencing a section, we are also likely changing the sections ultimately throughout the process as well. So do we wanna leave it and then change it last when we change it
Yeah.
all? Or do we
So that'll
wanna,
be the question, whether you want to fix
Right.
things,
as we go and have to fix them twice,
yeah,
or
Right.
potentially just
you'd have to.
fix
look
them
at-
all at the end?
Yeah. So,
And that, I mean, that's, strategically, I'd rather just touch it once.
yeah. No, of
Knowing
course.
that it lives in here already,
yeah,
and I mean, it just creates a headache for you guys, but not me. I'm not billing anything right now. But knowing that we're likely going to change the numerical values on most, if not all, of the sections anyways, in some form or fashion.
So, I think we have a fairly good idea, and I think it might be helpful. I mean, this is a mental note for me, and what I wrote down is, I do better looking at a visual, so I think if I can just kind of like put this in writing to you all in terms of, hey, here's the red line versions of this. This is something that I think should be in terms of one article for the simplistic minor changes, and then we'll have discussions obviously on the ADU, and then I
Yeah.
need a little bit more work on the floodplain, because that's something that's a little more complicated, but we could take it from there, and then,
So,
I think that's
hopefully
a good-
focus on floodplain and ADU next time, then?
Yeah.
When
Maybe we
you're
could,
hearing
we
on
could
the
rubber
ADU?
stamp the minor changes, because I think they'll agree with most of them, and then, so we have something sort of accomplished by the time you guys have your end of October meeting.
October 3rd,
Yeah.
yeah.
Alright,
And
we'll
we
have
can-
it done by then.
Oh,
We can
yeah,
come
oh,
back,
okay.
we can come back anytime to the
Yeah.
planning board too.
Okay.
I just wanna make sure we give them an update,
oh,
to
yeah.
know what's happening, where we
Yeah.
are.
I mean, we have
Yeah.
time, I think
Yeah.
a real deadline in terms of making sure we have everything is probably before late November,
Yeah,
in terms of like,
Yeah.
at least how we have a framework of, this is what we're going
Yeah.
for. Obviously,
Yeah.
the language of the bylaw can change, but I mean, I like the language of the amendment can change, but when we go to the planning board, hopefully maybe December, depending on you guys'
Well,
schedule.
Yeah, depending on, because December will probably only have one, right?
Yeah.
December because of the holiday schedule.
Depends on when the warrant will close then, so maybe
So
January.
you want, yeah, find out when the last, we
Yeah.
wanna plan it far enough ahead so we can have our hearing before.
It's crazy
So
talking
we can
about.
have a corrected version go in to the,
For the warrant article.
Yes.
warrant article.
Yep.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
don't wanna have changes done after you put something in, because we can't change it at that.
Technically you can, but
You
that's
can,
a,
yeah,
that's a
that's a-
debate
that's a-
that we
that's
had
a-
last time.
that's
Yeah.
a whole
It's a
mis-
much tougher.
that's misinformation that
It
that
is
changed it.
misinformation,
Yeah,
you
that's-
absolutely can
I,
change.
I, I
There's
mean,
a lot of that going around, like,
there is,
things
yeah,
that
because,
aren't true.
I mean, otherwise, if you couldn't change it, why even do a hearing?
Yeah,
You know, why would you,
That's why I got that memo
Yeah.
from Amy Quest from town council.
Yeah, yeah.
You can absolutely change
Yeah.
language.
yeah,
yeah,
Up until the warrant goes to print.
yeah.
yeah.
Especially if it's I mean, especially if it's editorial.
Mhm.
If it's the substance of it, that's what
That's
becomes
different,
problematic.
So,
But-
just, you know, I'm planning, and I'm sure John would support me on this, that, to have an update on this committee.
Yep.
For every planning board meeting where there's something they've changed.
Yeah.
You know, we wanna keep it in front of the rest of the board
Yeah.
members.
Yeah, we want
So
to.
that they don't
have-
forget this
So they
is
can
going
input
on.
any comments they
Yeah.
have too, I suppose.
I think if we.
Oh,
aim
for sure.
Because they're, besides zoning, they're the ones who.
Well, that's part of, yeah, especially meeting them in
Yeah.
December before, it'd be good not to just, hey, sponsor it for the warrant, but, all right, what are your first initial comments and anything we can change?
Yeah.
Not just sponsor for the warrant,
Yeah.
but like, all right, I don't agree with this, or maybe you should look at it this way,
Yeah.
we wanna make those changes
Well,
going into.
the other thing is Jack has been on the board for a while.
Yep.
He might know why some of those things are there.
Yep, yeah, that's true. One last thing, I guess, before we go, section 15, the ground mounted solar voltaic overlay district, I know we have that, obviously as an overlay district.
I would just put it in the districts.
My opinion of this for a while is changing this to not be an overlay, but be something that's incorporated in part of the table of use. You can make
Well,
it a
can
special.
we change that now?
You could, you can incorporate it as its own, so that you could keep section 15 and keep the provisions of section 15 and edit them as needed, but I'm saying this mostly because of the results of, recent litigation dealing with the North Street
Yeah.
project, and how we zone for solar is not really what the state
And,
deems as adequate.
and also, we should be much more saying, where do we want solar, rather than waiting until a developer comes and says, I wanna change
Because
the
we
overlay
still have
district.
control over how the regulation lays out, but making them go to town meeting to make a zoning
Yeah.
amendment is, a zoning map changes, that's the problem there.
Yeah.
Like, that's,
Yeah.
but we can
And
still control, we can still regulate how it actually works, just
And-
treat it as a use.
So they've also had problems with that, not just, I mean, this has been a pretty common issue for the last 10 years, as
Mhm.
far as, I know they had a huge issue in, not Westwood, the one on the Pike, where the state wanted to put the solar panels off the Pike. They didn't want it, they had issues in Newton when they didn't want it, they had issues in,
It's Walter was a
Walt-
recent
yeah,
case.
Walter.
Walter is a huge case.
So I think to your point, of having it as an overlay district where you, in order to get it, if you want it, you have to change the map, becomes the issue, right?
Mhm.
Versus, also to your point, is
Yeah.
having it part of the use table, if you want solar, you can do it, but you have to do it under these constraints.
Yeah.
And we should be more encouraging where it should be. So for example, it's best to do solar on disturbed land and not doing it on undisturbed land,
Forest.
farmland.
Yeah.
You know, so those are best practices. I mean, I think that there's a wide agreement to that.
Yeah, and show that we can do it, like, again, Sharon have a bid on Highway Business District here, we've a lot of some just land that's just sitting there. No one drives down Route 1 to look at the scenery, you go down Route 1 like a bullet to get from A to B.
Right.
If we can incorporate, because that was to your case, the Waltham case, it also fell under the educational with the Regis case years ago, that boards were asked, what percentage of solar, what percentage of educational would the SJC accept? And they were like, we ain't giving you a percentage. And you're like, so that's the problem with the solar, no matter what you go to them with, they say, oh, you don't allow enough.
Yeah, so that's what Jim's getting at is the, and again, I don't wanna go into over the too many specifics, basically the reason for, you know, how the North Street case turned out, it had nothing to do with a central government function or anything to do, or anything within the Dover, it had entirely to do with that language within section 3 of chapter 40A. That was the provision, but the concern was, well, if you're determining that what we allow right now is not enough, then what is the threshold? Because that threshold is not defined in section 3. So that's where every town is in that situation. No
Yeah.
one has a defined threshold, but at least if you were to open it up and make it within your table of use for, and not for every district, of course, but like
Limited manufacturing,
Limited
industrial, highway business.
limited manufacturing may even be kind of fishy considering how many
Some
areas
areas.
we allow it, but
Yeah.
highway business,
Some of it's
industrial, maybe even town-owned land, that might be.
Town-owned land might be difficult too, but like, yeah, I mean, I
Might
think
be.
if you
There's
have,
a lot of town-owned land that's sitting out in the middle of a swamp.
But yeah, you couldn't use.
yeah, but technically this is town-owned land, so if they want, if in the use case table, they wanted to put the solar panels like they did on North Street, you know, above the parking lot out here, that would be
Well,
allowable.
they were talking about that, weren't
Well, if you were to put solar, I mean, if we were to do like a solar canopy, that's another thing, we don't really cover solar canopies, and I think we want to be like,
Probably
define
switch
those
this
really
and
well.
that,
but yeah, I think it's, Jim, you can answer this for me, if we want to put a solar canopy above town hall parking lot, would we be able to?
So yeah, because you're on government function, so we'd be protected here.
What is our function to generate?
No, it's to generate money for the town.
Well, that's, okay,
That's
so,
why,
so.
that's why the Aggie were denied the government
Yeah.
function, because Norfolk do not do solar fields.
Yeah.
So they tried to use that as a government function, it didn't apply to them.
So where it fall apart is at the library, if the library wanted to put them there, the library's
and the library
government
has-
function is not to generate
Yeah.
income for the,
So
The library has solar panels on the roof.
on the
on the
roof,
roof,
which
but
is
not,
allowed,
not
a
as a
canopy.
not as a canopy.
And we've always deemed canopies, some towns don't, we always have, since I've been here, we always have is, you do a solar canopy, that is ground mounted solar as far as we were concerned, because if you take the solar panels off the structure, you're just left with a steel frame. That steel frame is there solely to hold the panels up, that's ground mounted solar. So that's why we've always never allowed it in the town, because that was deemed, if you built a shed and then put the solar on the roof, you're golden. One project in town actually came in last year to do it. They're meant to be coming back, but they haven't, but they were going to cover their entire parking lot with structure and then put the solar on it. Because the structure's the primary, then the solar secondary. If you do like say what's up at the Aggie,
Yeah,
they're allowed to do it because of Dover,
yeah.
but if you take those solar panels off, you're just left with a steel frame. The entire thing of that steel frame is solely to hold the panels up. So to us that's considered ground mounted solar. But to Patrick's, it would be good if we could put somewhere in that ground mounted solar, so like all the hotels on Route 1 could cover their parking spaces, Rodman's Arena could cover his parking spaces with canopies and ground mounted and do those solar. And again, it mightn't meet the state level, but if we can show, hey, we have about 30% of our town allows it, they can't say, oh, we're being,
I think you also just, yeah.
we're not picking on people, saying, we don't allow it.
We've learned from that lawsuit, but also just from the
Yeah.
standpoint of, you know, Phil's
You-
point,
you-
we wanna regulate where it should be.
Where
and
it
I
should be
think-
now, yeah.
Yeah.
And also
And we
from an
should be
economic
encouraging
standpoint,
solar where it should
It's
be.
generating income for the town.
For anybody, I mean, I have solar panels, I generate more electricity than I use.
Yeah,
And it's, if you have the ability to have a house in the right place and you can put it on your roof, that's good to do.
Yeah.
But if the town should put it on all of its buildings, you know, we should be,
well, we are in the process of doing that right now, actually.
are we? Yeah.
Yes, so 2 of the schools are getting it.
Oh, yeah, that's right, the
So
schools.
we are
Johnson.
implementing
We
that.
were gonna do a canopy at right, at the
We're
Johnson
doing a
School?
canopy at the Johnson School,
Johnson
yeah.
School, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's, I guess, for the solar.
Yeah, that's, to run the solar to the town, so it's,
Yeah.
again, that's why,
So it's a-
well, one's picked on
it's
government
a-
and it's under Dover, we
yeah.
can use both for that
Well,
protection.
what happens if the town sells Johnson? Is that-
Becomes a pre-existing non-conformity, it's like,
Yeah.
that's the, so it depends, and then what's the use there? Cause the only use that can be in Johnson is an educational use, so the pounds are protected, because if you ever sell Johnson, that's in residential zone. So the only thing that can ever be in Johnson is a school, is an
Yeah.
educational use, so
Well, it's-
selling to a warehouse or a factory won't work. Cause that's why when well, obviously Johnson's being rented now by 2 educational schools, that's all we could rent it to.
Johnson's in the PCRC.
Yeah,
Or- or-
which doesn't allow those uses in it either,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
that thing is, just because it got to release, doesn't mean it's the end and be all.
Yeah, you'd have to rezone it if you did like an RFP or something like
Yeah.
that, for like something outside of.
Yeah, but if something like that comes again, I think the more, the Patrick's part and Phil's part, the more we can say, yeah, it's allowed in a use table in some part of our town, it gives us more pushback that if, again, mightn't work, but at least at the state level, if another North Street comes, we can say, hey, we've all this space you can use, you're running a perfectly good, nice field, a nice green area, a nice forest. We allow you to do it like in 30% of our town.
Yeah.
It gives us some more fight back against, because again, it's under section 3, which is, again, solar, Dover, Red Religion, daycare. It's one of those sections that's virtually
But the
bulletproof.
town is still, and that's my big gripe with it, is
Yeah.
the town has the right to
Yeah.
to zone their town accordingly, and
Mhm.
so to like, to open that up everywhere, that's problematic, but
Yeah.
we're taking a better step forward if we can make it much more, not just an overlay, but, within multiple zoning
Yeah.
districts.
And I think, I mean, the primary goal of zoning, right, is that it's a prohibition of misuse, not a restriction of use entirely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And I think to the point of having it as an overlay district is a restriction on use, right, versus as a use table.
And it's a burden for anyone who wants to do a solar, because you have to go to town meeting to get to get the overlay district changed, which is the.
Which is, it's a
Um,
lot, you
yeah.
have to follow a lot of process procedures, so I would agree, I think we could throw this into another section, but
Mhm.
it's not something, I think, none of the sections that we talked about in this one.
It's a
This
big
is
thing
a-
right
it's
now,
all-
yeah, would be
This is
very
a
controversial,
push to-
probably,
Yeah.
yeah. for
no, I
solar.
think it would be good, again, to your point, like, yeah, you want the town, the whole point of zoning is not to lock people out, but it's also to protect the people of Walpole at
Right.
the same time, so you gotta find that sweet spot there.
Yeah.
Because, yeah, a developer can come in, do this, and go to the town and go everything, or he can just go, I'm going to the state and I'm gonna get it rubber stamped.
I mean, the most obvious answer is protecting the residential districts.
Yeah.
That's where it
Main
comes
goal.
down to, it's.
And I do wanna say that canopies on parking lots can be good because it keeps the snow off the cars.
Yeah.
Or
I
people like it.
think they're great for
You know,
the
that's
fact
a-
that you have like
Green
it's pseudo
zone.
indoor parking.
Yeah.
But
So
do I want it next to me? No.
But that would
not
be,
necessarily.
that would get into the.
Yeah.
But that's
Yeah.
goes to the use,
Yeah.
the use
Yeah.
table versus
Yeah,
going
if
to the.
if it was a
going
parking
to-
lot in a
Right.
shopping center or something, then.
Yeah, cover it,
Yeah.
that's,
Yeah,
like, you're not in the mall to.
Right, they
you
wanna
don't
do a
go to-
Walpole Mall wants it, go
Yeah,
for it.
you don't go there for like the pretty parking, you're going
Right.
to a store, you're going to, and middle of winter if your car's not covered,
Yeah.
that saves my back.
Alright, guys, so we covered a lot.
I think we're
It's a
good.
lot, it's a lot to digest, I think, every time I go through this, it's a little bit overwhelming, but from here, like I said, I'll try to get some red line stuff out there, bring some questions to town council that want full clarity on, and then in terms of scheduling a next meeting or goals for that next meeting, probably come away with a better idea of, any remaining questions on a few of those sections, specifically like 2 and 4. And then maybe start to kind of discuss ADUs, see if I can get a draft of floodplain.
Because I was thinking, do you want to, if it's okay with everybody, if you want to
Yep.
leave the meeting till the 21st of October, that way I'll have been to the state, I should have
That's
more options for
probably
us,
good, yeah.
and more, should have more information.
Yeah, if we wanna leave it,
Yeah,
it's 21st,
That's that's
It's a
good.
Monday.
It's a Monday?
If it's Monday, if it's at 7, I can do Monday, the 21st.
What day is it, October?
October 21st, it's a Monday.
Yeah, that
Like
would
if we,
work.
because we have the thing on the 18th, 19th,
Yeah.
so at least I'm-
21st is, October 21st in that town meeting?
Oh, it is, it is town meeting.
What about October 23rd, which is that Wednesday?
And the 20th, it might go up to the
October's
23rd.
back up.
Yeah,
twenty-fourth.
it's Monday, Wednesdays, as long as it goes after the 21st.
Likely zoning planning board.
The following week would be the
28th?
28th,
I'm gone, I won't be around.
29th?
I'm gone on
Oh, the
the
whole
month,
week.
yeah.
What about the 22nd?
22nd,
You can't
Tuesday?
do Tuesdays.
I can't do that Tuesday.
How, well, Jim, what, so,
He wouldn't have
Well,
that,
so
that
I'm
meeting.
trying to clarify today, cause it's weird, they put it down as October 19th,
yeah.
which is a Saturday. I've never seen too many inspectors work on Saturdays, so,
Maybe that's why
It's
they're
gonna
doing
be
it,
on.
no one shows up.
could be. So I put I put an email into the Sembo board to see is this the right date?
So, we get complicated when we get into November, cause I think we wanna be, I think we should try to meet in October, only
Definitely.
because it's,
Yeah.
gives November for any sort of changes. I think we might need to,
Fridays?
what, I don't know, no night meetings on a Friday, Jim, come on.
Sorry.
But we may need to meet before the 21st then, if those 2 weeks are kind of tough of town meeting,
Yeah.
and if,
We can always get the clarity that if you have the
After.
meet afterwards.
Yeah.
oh yeah, we can get that clarity,
Yeah.
that's on ADUs, we can just talk to town council. and
We
just
can
get
kind of set a
that.
base and I can get
Right.
any, or even if you want to email me between now and then, I'll send you all an email on what Patrick had there tonight, what the state came out with as an ADU.
So-
I'll send it to you, and if you've any questions or anything, send them to me and I can ask that at the state. And go, hey, can you
That
clarify
actually might be a
this?
really good use of it, is having that opportunity to ask the random
Yeah.
one-off questions we might
Cause
have.
we still, we don't need to finalize anything before
No.
this October meeting, but if we come in with maybe
Yeah,
a
but
regular
if-
draft, and then.
We're gonna take
Actually,
advantage
maybe
of
that's,
this meeting.
maybe that's what we
If
do,
any
is we meet,
questions.
and then if we have questions at that meeting,
Yeah.
we could
Yeah,
Yeah.
get them
Yeah.
at the state level, and then we get
Yeah.
ultimate clarity before we go
Oh,
to the next
you
one.
mean schedule our next meeting,
Prior to the
Friday
meeting with the
is-
state, right?
and then if there are any
so-
discussions, we have
Yeah.
questions that you can.
The week of the 21st won't work for town meeting, if Jim's out,
Yeah,
the
so
week of the 28th, but how about
14th.
14th?
Well, 14th is Columbus Day.
No, that's the 7th, or is it?
No, it's the 14th.
Is
The
it
14th is Columbus Day.
It's
Unless
not
we do-
Columbus, it's not Columbus Day anymore, Joe.
Sorry.
I think it's Indigenous
What is
Peoples'
it?
Day.
Native Americans.
It hasn't changed on my
It is a
phone yet.
bank
so
holiday.
The iPhone hasn't changed, it doesn't count.
How about the 16th? Wednesday?
Wednesday.
That's
Or-
fine, by me.
I don't have-
You're
I'm a Thursdays, so
yeah.
Wednesdays would only be if there was ZBA, I don't think, there's nothing I can't miss.
Yeah, so ZBA is on the 2nd, and then we don't have there's not a second meeting scheduled for ZBA yet. There
Okay.
has the potential to be,
Would it be that 16th?
it'd be that or the 9th.
No, what would it be, the 9th, would it, one week after?
It depends on the availability of the board.
Again, it's not that important.
Yeah.
If there's nothing scheduled now, it's nothing that's in the works right now, so I'm not
It
really
wouldn't-
looking for anything odd, yeah.
Yeah,
It
I
might be
wouldn't.
something that's going now.
Yeah, in terms of the ZBA, I wouldn't know until after the 2nd what their
Yeah,
plan is if they
so
want.
it's probably doable, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we're limited unless, cause if we only got Mondays and Wednesdays,
Yeah.
that's really probably it.
Yeah.
So
I think-
October 16th,
Yeah.
or wait, no, that's it.
October
16th.
16th, yeah.
Okay.
And if we need to move it to something else, ZBA or something else,
I can let you
then
guys
we
know
can figure that
yeah.
out, but
It's really, yeah, 16th or the 9th is the two potential options if
Yeah.
the ZBA needs to continue anything.
Yeah, and I'll send you the KP law on, or the state on the ADU, so you can
Yep.
read over it. And again, we'll talk on the 16th, and if we get questions that you want, I can ask the state when I go out to the meeting, so
it'd be perfect.
then for November, at least we'll have a better, hopefully better understanding of what we can do or can't do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Alright.
I make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
We sure, guys.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thanks, everybody.
Aye.
Thanks.